Hey guys, tonight we're doing something risky and maybe a little bit insane. You're about to become a concubine in ancient Rome, but not just for any emperor. No, you get Nero, the one who maybe set the city on fire, played the lyre while people screamed and married at a man while dressed as a woman after kicking his pregnant wife to death. Yeah, that Nero. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'm just here to whisper dark, delicious stories into your ears while you fall asleep wondering how you'd survive 2,000 years ago. And speaking of survival, you probably won't. Not for long. But let's not think about that yet. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I love seeing which corners of the world this little storytelling club reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're 16, maybe 17. That soft, blurry age where girlhood is done and womanhood hasn't fully landed yet. You've spent your whole life in the crowded backstreets of Rome's Suburra district, where the air always smells like oil, citrus peels, and the ever-present tang of people living too close together. You've carried amphorae for your mother, helped your father haggle in the marketplace, and laughed with your brothers over burnt lentils. Life has been noisy, messy, and simple, but that ends today. The soldiers come at dawn, not the brutish, sweaty local guards. No, these are tall, polished Praetorians, clad in gleaming cuirasses and blood-red cloaks, boots clicking like clockwork down the alleyway. They say nothing to your parents. They simply hand your father a scroll sealed with a golden bull's head and point to you. He doesn't argue. He doesn't even cry. You don't either. You just look down at your feet, half expecting the ground to disappear beneath them. You don't walk. You're carried in a curtained litter, embroidered silk brushing your cheek, the scent of sandalwood and cold bronze filling your lungs. Outside, the rumble of street carts and shouts fade as you climb the Palatine Hill. Rome's heart beats slower up here. The noise of the poor doesn't reach the emperor's palace. But where you're going, it's not the palace, it's something else, something newer, stranger. They call it the Domus Aurea, the Golden House, Nero's pleasure palace built like a fever dream. As the litter curtain lifts, you see it for the first time, and your jaw forgets how to close. Golden tiles glitter on the walls, catching the light like scales on a serpent. Fountains spew rosewater into marble basins. There are statues of gods with Nero's face, yes, even Venus, and peacocks strut by as if this is their kingdom. Every surface glows. Every step echoes. You've never seen so much wealth, so much madness. Inside, eunuchs greet you. One plucks your hand like it's a lyre string, another drapes a sheer robe over your tunic and clicks his tongue. Too rustic, he says, flicking imaginary dust from your shoulder. But there's potential. The emperor likes potential. They take you to a chamber of mirrors. Not small hand mirrors, these are full-length polished bronze panels from floor to ceiling. You're undressed without ceremony. Oiled, combed, perfumed and repainted. Gold dust is brushed onto your cheeks. Your hair is coiled into ringlets tight enough to ache. A eunuch places a fine chain around your neck. The pendant? A miniature cameo of Nero's face. You're already branded. You'll see him tonight, one of them murmurs, as if he's warning you. Or maybe blessing you. The waiting begins. You're led to a garden with peacocks and purple irises. Every surface gleams unnaturally, as if waxed daily. Other girls are there, lounging like tired cats. You notice the patterns fast. The older ones are quieter, sharper-eyed. They don't ask questions. The younger ones giggle and whisper and get corrected. You're offered figs and honeyed wine. A girl named Livia, who can't be more than 15, leans over. "Don't eat too much," she whispers. "He doesn't like fullness." Before you can respond, a gong sounds. Not a bell. A gong. Deep and ceremonial. The older girls rise. So do you. Torchlight guides you through a corridor lined with frescoes of satyrs and nymphs, doing things that make your ears burn. At the end of the hallway, there's a circular chamber with a domed ceiling painted like the night sky. As you step in, the floor beneath you rotates. Slowly, endlessly. A table of cushions sits at the centre, and then he enters. Nero. You've seen statues, you've heard the gossip, but nothing prepares you for the real thing. He's shorter than you expected. Plumper, his eyes are heavy-lidded, like a man always half drunk or half bored. But when he smiles, the room tilts. His teeth are bright, His hair is curled and dyed gold and his tunic is purple. Reserved only for emperors, there are rings on every finger. He looks at you just once, and that's it. You've been chosen. One finger crooks, and you're led toward him. You kneel. He smells like cinnamon and crushed violets. He touches your chin, turns your face side to side like you're a statue he's appraising. "She'll do," he says. Then more softly, as he leans close enough for only you to hear, "Have you ever sung for the gods, little dove?" You shake your head. You want to say no, but your throat won't unlock. He grins. "You will." The night isn't what you expect. There's no immediate violence, no intimacy. Instead, Nero performs, literally. He grabs a lyre, steps onto a tiny marble dais, and begins to sing in ancient Greek. The concubines sway. Some pretend to be enchanted. Some probably are. His voice is fine, but the way everyone reacts, you'd think Apollo himself had descended. You clap, too. You must. At the end of the night, you're taken not to his bedroom, but to a smaller chamber with a silk bed, a bronze basin, and a mural of naked gods wrestling across the ceiling. You lie there, staring up at them. Outside, a lion roars. Somewhere below you, the city murmurs, and you realize you're not free. You've entered a world gilded in madness, beauty, and danger. You're a pet, an ornament, a concubine of Emperor Nero. You wake to the sound of flutes. Not a full melody, just the same 4 notes, played over and over, like a dream you can't shake off. The room smells like last night's incense, honeyed wine, and something musky and sharp, frankincense maybe. Your head is heavy from the wine you only pretended to sip, and your limbs ache from sleeping in a bed too soft, too unfamiliar. The mural of writhing gods is still on the ceiling. One of them, Mars maybe, is mid-thrust into another deity. You roll your eyes. Modesty, apparently, is for the poor. A young servant girl slips in without a word and pours warm water into the basin. She doesn't look at you directly. You're not sure if it's fear, training, or just disinterest. Either way, she helps you bathe, oils your skin, and dresses you in another gauzy robe, so sheer it may as well be a suggestion. Then come the instructions. A eunuch you vaguely recognize, square jaw, sour expression, the one who called you rustic yesterday, arrives holding a polished wooden box. He opens it slowly, reverently, revealing a necklace of black pearls and gold filigree. He has asked for you, he says without any build-up. This evening. You say nothing. What's there to say? You're summoned like a dish from a banquet menu, but the day is yours, for now. You're led through a side passage that loops through an interior courtyard garden. Olive trees grow here, pruned into elaborate arches, their trunks gnarled like sleeping animals. In the centre, a marble pool reflects the sky. Women, some familiar, others not, sit along the edges, reading scrolls, weaving garlands, or simply staring into space like ghosts. You sit beside one. She's older than the others, maybe late 20s, which practically makes her a grandmother in concubine years. Her hair is dark and pinned high, held in place with golden needles. She doesn't look at you. "Does it get easier?" you ask. "No," she says flatly. "You get better at pretending it does. That's when you understand this isn't a harem. It's a court. A strange, theatrical, cruel court. And like any court, it has its own hierarchy. Nero's the sun, and well, you're just one more orbiting moon. Distant, temporary, destined to burn up eventually. The older concubines have their own alliances, quiet looks that pass like coded messages. You notice 2 women holding hands under a silk parasol, their fingers interlaced like ivy vines. Another woman, pale as milk, slips a folded note into a servant's sleeve when she thinks no one's watching. But someone's always watching. By midday, you're ushered into a smaller chamber just off the main garden, where a group of girls are having their faces repainted. The walls are tiled with mother of pearl and glint in the sunlight. The eunuch from earlier gestures toward a stool. "You'll wear your hair up tonight," he says. "The Emperor likes the line of your throat." As 2 attendants begin teasing your curls into a coiled tower, he leans in closer. Don't speak unless he speaks to you. Don't laugh unless he laughs first. And whatever you do, don't sing. You blink. Sing? He grimaces. Unless you want to die by lyre. You don't know if he's serious. The worst part is, he might be. The hours slide by like melted wax. You nibble on dates. You're massaged with oils. You're dressed in a saffron robe with embroidered edges, held closed with a jewelled pin. Your skin itches beneath the luxury. You've never worn anything so fine. You've also never been so uncomfortable. When the sun begins to set, you're led through another corridor, this one lined with panels of ivory inlaid with amethyst. The air grows cooler, the scents sharper, the music louder. And then you're there again, the same dome chamber with its slowly rotating floor. Nero sits sprawled across a couch draped in blue silk, a wreath of golden laurel pressing into his curls. He looks more relaxed than yesterday, more dangerous somehow. There's wine in his hand and a smear of something dark on his lower lip, grapes or maybe blood. With him are a few senators, a flute girl, and one man wearing only a lion skin, eyes glassy with wine. Nero's eyes flick to you. "There she is," he says, pleased. "My little Siechen." He gestures, and you approach. You kneel. The marble is cold through the silk. "Do you like the robe?" he asks. You nod. "I had it made in Alexandria. Stolen from a priestess. She wept when I took it." He chuckles. "But she'll thank me in the afterlife." This is how he is. Erratic, gleeful, cruel. You never know what's true. Did he really steal it? Was the priestess real? Was the weeping imagined? You're beginning to realize that truth in this palace is as fluid as wine. Whatever Nero says becomes reality, if only for the moment. You're made to sit at his feet while he debates poetry with a senator who seems absolutely terrified. Nero asks you which you prefer, Virgil or Ovid. You answer Ovid, not because you prefer him, but because you've actually heard of him. Nero grins. "Ovid, of course. You like desire, misrule, I can tell." He offers you grapes, one by one, and you take them. They taste like sweetness tinged with fear. Later you're led to a private room, and not your silk-bedded chamber, his. It's quieter here. The madness dialed down to a slow pulse. He watches you undress, then pulls you to the bed without ceremony. It's not romantic, it's not violent, it's mechanical, performed. After, he talks. That's the strangest part. He rambles about a dream he had where the gods told him he'd surpass Alexander, about his plans to recite epic poetry at the next public games, about a vision he had of Rome remade entirely in gold. "I will burn the old city away," he whispers, "and rise above it, like a phoenix." You lie beside him, silent, not daring to breathe too loudly. Eventually, he falls asleep. You don't. The ceiling above is painted with doves and laurel leaves, but you can't stop staring at the small crack in the corner, where something green and slimy wiggles just out of sight. Even here, in the Emperor's bed, decay sneaks in. So this is the gilded cage. Luxury, power, control. But none of it yours. Velvet chains still hold you fast. The morning after is worse than the night itself. You wake before the sun, still curled beneath the heavy perfumed sheets of Nero's chamber. He snores softly beside you, one arm thrown over his chest like a dead fish. His mouth hangs slightly open. His breath smells faintly of spoiled figs and cheap wine. A man who lives in excess, but with little consequence. You slip out of the bed like a whisper, and reach for the silk robe folded at the edge of the couch, careful not to disturb the golden laurel crown discarded beside it. It's bent slightly, like he rolled onto it in his sleep. You pull the robe over your shoulders and look around. The room is bizarre in the way only Nero's rooms are. An entire ceiling mural of himself ascending into Olympus, attended by cherubs and clothed in purple. Beneath that divine narcissism, there's a golden birdcage the size of a carriage. A single white dove stares at you from inside it. Somehow you feel more caged than it does. Outside the chamber, a different set of eunuchs are waiting. You note it immediately. The shifts in staff, the rotating faces, the constant rearrangement is like a strategy. Keep the household changing so no one gets too familiar, or too loyal. You're returned to your quarters with barely a word. Another bath, another silken wrap. You expect rest, but the older concubine from the garden, the one with the gold hairpins, appears at your door. Her name, you learn, is Domitia. She doesn't ask to come in. She simply walks past you and sits by the window peeling a fig with a small ivory knife. "You've been noticed," she says, without looking at you. "That's dangerous." "I didn't ask to be," you reply. She smiles faintly, slicing deeper into the fig. "That's irrelevant." And then, As if she were offering you tea, she tells you how one girl, Cassia, once held Nero's favour for a whole month. She was allowed to dine beside him, bathe in the Emperor's private chamber, even wear his ring on a chain around her neck. Then one night, Nero decided she frowned too much. The next morning, she'd fallen from a garden balcony. You don't ask where the balcony was. You don't ask if she jumped. You don't need to. Later that afternoon, you're summoned to a private viewing of a play. Not at a theatre, no. Nero brings the theatre to him. A temporary stage has been erected in one of the palace's indoor courts, and rows of plush divans face it. There are no tickets, no crowds. Just Nero, a handful of sycophantic senators, a few musicians, and, to your increasing discomfort, you. You sit beside Nero again, though this time he doesn't touch you. He's dressed like a Greek philosopher, robe draped dramatically, sandals gilded. The play is in Greek, and you understand only fragments, but it doesn't matter. It's not about the words, it's about Nero, because of course he stars in it. He strides across the stage clutching a wooden sword, weeping and shouting and pulling at his own dyed curls. You're meant to be moved. You're meant to be changed by the sheer brilliance of his performance. So you clap, loudly, as if your life depends on it. Because, let's be honest, it might. Midway through the second act, as Nero dies tragically in his lover's arms, again, he breaks character just enough to glance at you. "You're watching," he says to you across the stage. "Good." Everyone laughs. You smile. Your jaw aches from it. Backstage, you meet him again. Alone, except for a mute servant who fans him while he reclines on a couch and sips watered wine. He's flushed from the stage lights, sweat glistening on his forehead. "You have good eyes," he says suddenly, "the kind that listen." You're not entirely sure what that means. He grabs your wrist, not painfully but firmly, and pulls you down beside him. "I'm not like other emperors," he continues. "They swing swords. I wield beauty, music, art." You nod. "Do you know what they say about me?" he asks, eyes narrowing. You freeze. There's only one answer. "No." He laughs, sharp and delighted. "Liar." Then softer, but a smart one. There's a strange fragility beneath his madness. A boy who was crowned too young and praised too easily. It doesn't make him less dangerous. In fact, it makes him more so. He believes his own illusions, and expects you to believe them too. He releases your wrist and lies back. "Stay," he murmurs. "Just stay while I sleep." And so you do. Not because you want to, but because you know leaving would raise more questions than staying. When you're finally dismissed, the eunuch at the door gives you a brief nod. Respect? Pity? It's hard to tell. That night, back in your room, you finally cry. Quietly, face buried in the two soft pillows that smell like rose oil and dust. It's not grief, not even fear exactly, it's a kind of mourning for the version of yourself that used to laugh in the Subura, who used to steal extra figs from the cart and run barefoot through muddy alleys. That girl's gone. Now you live in a palace where gold peels like old paint, where emperors sing their own eulogies and expect applause. You've become a player in his endless theatre, where every smile is a script and every breath is a performance. And the worst part, you're getting good at it. You're not told it's going to happen. No warning, no gentle announcement, no preparation. Just another warm Roman evening, the sky streaked lavender, the air carrying that thick perfume heaviness of overripe fruit and burning incense. You're summoned again, not to his bedchamber or the garden or the miniature theatre, but to the atrium nocturnum, the night hall, a room you haven't seen before. That's your first red flag. The walls are hung with black velvet. No frescoes here, no gold, no flowers, nothing to soften the weight of what's coming. A fire crackles at the centre, low and lazy, like it's already eaten what it came for. The whole chamber smells like spiced wine and old smoke. There are torches set into the marble floor, flickering in circular formation around a sunken dais. That's where he waits. Nero, draped in nothing but a white linen wrap, barefoot, with coal smeared under his eyes like a stage performer, or a corpse. His hair, normally curled and glossy, hangs damp and flat around his face. He looks younger, wilder. You're led to him by two eunuchs who barely touch you, but their presence is enough to remind you this isn't a request. You step barefoot into the circle of light. The marble feels cold against your soles. He smiles, not kindly, not cruelly either. It's worse than that. It's theatrical. Tonight, he says, we remove pretense. He raises one arm, and from the darkness beyond the torchlight more figures step forward. The other concubines, not all of them, just a few. Domitia is there, her face carved from stone. So is Livia, eyes darting nervously, hands trembling. Others you barely know. A senator's wife, you think. Maybe a dancer who used to belong to the Temple of Cybele. They form a circle around you, and then Nero begins. He chants something in Greek. You don't catch it all, but there are fragments. Words that sound like eros and thanatos, desire and death. Two sides of the same coin. His voice rises and falls, and at certain moments the others respond in chorus. Their voices flat, practiced. It's a ritual, or a performance disguised as one, or a punishment dressed in silk and firelight. Then the masks are brought out. Literal masks, carved from thin wood and painted with exaggerated features. Open mouths, wide eyes, red cheeks. They are passed to the others, who place them over their faces without question. You're the only one left barefaced, standing in the centre of this anonymous circle. A torch sputters, and for a moment smoke clouds the room. The warmth from the fire pulses across your skin. It would be almost beautiful if it weren't so suffocating. And then it begins. Not an assault, not exactly, but a performance you're forced to be part of. They circle you slowly. Each one steps forward, reciting lines, confessions, desires, threats, all written for you but not about you. One accuses you of seduction, another praises your purity, a third warns you about your ambition. All of it scripted, rehearsed, but somehow personal. Livia trembles as she speaks. Domitia's voice is steady, cruel. Nero watches it all from his dais, legs crossed, arms draped across the sides of his golden chair, like a bored god. Then it's your turn. He stands, walks slowly to you and places both hands on your shoulders. Now you speak, he says. Tell us who you really are. You freeze. There is no script for you. That's the trap. Your mind races. Do you perform? Break into tears? Confess love? Offer loyalty? Mock him? The wrong choice could end in exile, or worse, becoming yet another body in the palace garden's hidden corner. So you lie. I am yours, you say quietly. Whatever you need me to be. A long silence. The torches crackle. Somewhere in the darkness, a flute plays a single wandering note. Then Nero laughs, loud, delighted. She understands, he cries to the others. She understands the art of survival. And just like that, it's over. The others file out without a word. The masks are collected. The circle breaks. Nero claps his hands once and a servant brings in wine and honey cakes. He offers you one like nothing just happened. You take it, your fingers barely steady. That night, as you lie in your chamber, you think about what just occurred. Was it a test? A game? A warning? All of the above? Domitia visits you again, long after the torches have burned low. You passed, she says simply. What was that, you ask? She shrugs. He calls it the firelight initiation. Happens to all of us eventually. It's how he decides if we're just flesh, or if we're something more entertaining. Is that good, you ask? She gives you a look, half sympathy, half envy. It means he'll keep you around. Outside, the wind rustles the olive trees. Somewhere across the city, a dog barks once, then goes quiet. You stare at the ceiling, at the painted doves you now realize are chained at the feet. You're not sure what just happened, but it changed something. Not in him, in you. You're learning to play the game, and God's help you're starting to win. Mornings feel different now, not lighter, just sharper. The air slices instead of floats, and even the sunlight seems more deliberate, less forgiving. You rise earlier than before without being called. There's a rhythm to it now. Bathe, oil, dress, eat, wait. No one tells you where to be. You've begun to know by instinct when to walk slowly through the garden, when to linger near the columns that catch the light just right, when to disappear entirely. It's a performance, and you're no longer a guest star. You've got a recurring role now. The other concubines have noticed. You feel it in the silence they offer when you enter a room. Not hostile, but wary. Like you've become something else. Maybe a threat, maybe a mirror. They don't hate you, they just don't trust you. And why should they? Domitia still talks to you, though her tone has cooled. Less warm elder sister, More advisor with a caveat. She warns you, between bites of apricot, not to confuse his favour with permanence. He burns fast, she says, and when he tires of a flame, he doesn't snuff it out. He lets it eat itself. You ask her what happened to Livia. She doesn't answer. Later that day, you're summoned again, but not to Nero. Instead, you're escorted to the room known among the staff as the Violet Chamber. No one talks about it openly. It's a private salon used only when Nero wants to impress someone powerful or punish them quietly. Inside, it smells like lavender and stale fear. You're not alone. 3 women are already seated on low cushions. One you recognise, a noble's daughter, barely 15, pale and thin-lipped. Another is older, heavily jewelled, with a face like a hawk. The third woman is someone new. She wears no makeup, no jewellery, no shoes. Her dress is simple, her eyes unreadable. When she looks at you, it's like being measured. Then she speaks. "You're the Emperor's newest indulgence," she says, not a question. You nod. There's no point denying it. "I'm Pythia," she continues, "formerly of Delphi. Now I serve Rome." You're about to ask what that means, but she's already standing, walking slowly around the room as if circling prey. You realise with a jolt that this isn't a social visit. It's an audition, a test behind the test. "You've pleased the Emperor," she says, "but that's not enough. He needs more than pleasure. He needs loyalty, witnesses, shadows that flatter him when the sun's not out." Then she stops, just behind you. Her breath grazes your neck. "Tell me," she whispers, "would you kill for him?" You don't answer. That's the right move. She chuckles. "Good, you're not stupid." When the door finally opens and you're dismissed, the air outside feels impossibly fresh. You exhale without realising you are holding your breath. The guards don't speak as they escort you back to your chamber, but one of them looks at you strangely, like maybe he was the one who summoned you there in the first place. That night, Nero hosts a banquet. Not a quiet one like the others, but a full spectacle, a feast that stretches across several hours, with courses so elaborate you can't tell if you're meant to eat them or admire them. Doves stuffed with dates and pine nuts, fish sculpted into peacocks, a boar roasted whole, its mouth stuffed with grapes and gold foil. You're seated close to Nero, not beside him, but near enough that your cup is never empty. The wine is stronger than usual, the music louder. There's tension in the air, not fear exactly, but electricity. Anticipation. Then he stands, goblet raised. The room falls silent. "My friends," he begins, "tonight we celebrate more than good wine and beautiful company. Tonight we celebrate trust." He gestures, and a servant brings forward a young man, barely older than you, shivering slightly, eyes darting to every corner of the room. He wears a faded senator's sash, though clearly no longer in office. "This," Nero declares, "is a traitor. He spread lies, accused me of abandoning the gods, of favouring the Greeks too much." Murmurs ripple through the banquet. "Of course," Nero continues, "I am merciful." He turns to the man, almost gently. "You may redeem yourself, here, tonight. Recite the Aeneid, from memory in Greek." You watch as the man opens his mouth, stutters, and goes completely blank. His lips twitch. He tries again. He gets out half a line before faltering. Nero sighs, a nod, 2 guards approach, and, in a movement so swift it feels rehearsed, drag the man backward and out of sight. You hear nothing, not even a scream, just the faint metallic whisper of a door shutting. Then Nero sits again, grinning. "So," he says cheerfully, "who wants more wine?" And the party resumes. Just like that. You sip your drink with shaking hands. This is Nero. Not just the performer, the lover, the god in his own mind, but the judge and the executioner. The man who can slit a throat with a smile and still ask for dessert. A week later, you hear whispers in the hallways. About the boy. He was the son of a former general. His body never turned up. His family has gone silent. One of the servants claims she saw the hawk-faced woman from the Violet Chamber that night, holding a blood-stained scroll. No one asks questions. You don't either. But you start watching more closely, listening to who whispers to whom, who drinks too little, who disappears for hours at a time. Because in Nero's world, knowledge is currency, and silence, if played right, is armour. You can smell the feast before you even see it. Honey-roasted dates, garlic rubbed into lamb so tender it practically melts just from the heat, and that ever-present undercurrent of rosewater clinging to everything like it's trying too hard. The palace smells like a brothel that caters only to gods. You're summoned again, of course, because tonight is another banquet. But not just any dinner party, this one is special. You've heard rumours for days now. Nero's invited the Eastern envoys, men cloaked in silks you've never seen, wearing perfume so strong it announces them an hour before they arrive. There's also a delegation from Egypt, supposedly bearing gifts. Statues, exotic birds, slaves with skin-painted gold. And, because why not, 2 philosophers who've sworn to debate live, in Greek, over whether love is an illusion or a form of divine madness. The betting odds are in favour of madness. You're dressed in a new robe for the occasion, sheer but dyed deep crimson, with golden embroidery curling along the sleeves like ivy. Your hair is twisted into ringlets, jewelled pins tucked in like daggers. The eunuchs are quieter than usual, the kind of quiet that says, don't ask questions tonight. Just smile, don't draw attention, which of course only makes you more alert. The banquet is held in the rotating dining room, a mechanical wonder built by some unfortunate engineer now long dead, possibly by the Nero's hand. The ceiling is carved with ivory and mother of pearl in the shape of constellations, and as it spins ever so gently you feel like you're dining inside the heavens themselves. That would be poetic if you didn't know how often blood has stained this floor. Nero arrives late, on purpose, always. The music stops when he enters, a soft hush rolling over the guests like a ripple of collective breath-holding. He's draped in deep blue tonight, the hem of his toga encrusted with pearls. There are fresh wreaths on his head, and his eyes, rimmed in kohl, look sharper than usual, hungrier. He greets the envoys with exaggerated hospitality, switching effortlessly between Greek and Latin, throwing in Egyptian phrases that probably aren't quite right, but no one dares correct him. The Egyptians laugh too loudly, the Greeks bow too deeply. Everyone wants to live. You're seated near the centre of the long table, but not beside Nero, closer than before though. Close enough for him to make eye contact, which he does, often. He never keeps his gaze on you long, but every glance is a little performance, a reminder. He owns you. As the courses arrive, swan stuffed with oysters, fish dyed with saffron, bread shaped like pyramids, you watch the other guests more than the food. They smile too hard, they eat too slowly. One man dabs his mouth between every bite, not from etiquette, but as if stalling, delaying something inevitable. Then the performers arrive, dancers with veils, musicians with strange instruments, and finally actors, not professional ones. These are slaves. Chosen from among the palace staff and costumed like gods. The play is called The Binding of Hera. Of course, Nero plays Zeus, because of course he does. But it's the scene halfway through the performance that makes your stomach clench. The actors reenact a trial. A beautiful young god is accused of treason. A panel of gods listens. Nero stands, wrapped in robes too fine for the scene, and delivers a monologue about loyalty, about love, about betrayal and punishment and mercy. And as he speaks, his eyes flick to you again. Just once, but it lands like a blade. The scene ends with the traitor stabbed dramatically, blood pouring in ribbons across the stage. Everyone claps, except you. You're too busy trying not to tremble, because the actor playing the traitor, you recognise him. He was one of the stable boys last week, kind, young, always humming, and now here he is, dead in that named theatre. Or maybe it's just theatre. You won't know unless he never comes back, and you have a sick feeling that you'll never see him again. Later, as the night spills past midnight and the wine dulls the edge of everything, a senator leans in beside you. He's older, sweating through his tunic, with wine-stained teeth. "Enjoying yourself?" he slurs. You nod, polite. He chuckles, wiping his mouth. "Our little empire runs on illusion, you know. Gold-plated nightmares. Do you know how many people die to keep this wine flowing?" You say nothing. That's safe. Saying nothing is always safer than saying the wrong thing. He smiles again, revealing gums dark with years of indulgence. "Don't worry, girl, you'll learn. You're clever, I can see it. That's why he keeps looking at you." Your stomach twists, but you keep your expression still. That's your new skill. You could win awards for that expression. You excuse yourself soon after, and find a corner near a fountain where the music is a dull murmur. You close your eyes and let the cold air wash over your skin. The stars are barely visible beyond the torch smoke. Rome still hums beyond the palace walls, alive with taverns and street fights, and lovers in alleyways. but you don't live in that world anymore. You live in this one, where a dinner party can end with a disappearance and no one blinks. Eventually Domitia finds you. She offers you a fig. You refuse. She eats it herself, then says, "You did well tonight." He's amused. "That's good." "Was the actor real?" you ask. She chews slowly, swallows. "He was. So that was his execution." "No," she says softly. "That was his funeral." You don't sleep that night. You lie awake in your chamber, staring at the ceiling, hearing echoes of Nero's voice performing justice like it's art. You wonder how many other funerals are scheduled for next week. You wonder when it will be your turn. The next morning you're handed a rose, just a single bloom, deep red, left on your bed without a note. It's not from Nero. That might be worse. You stare at the rose for a long time. It's fresh, still dewy, the petals perfect, velvety, blood dark. The kind of bloom that doesn't just grow anywhere. It had to be placed with intent. A message. But from who? And why? It's not Nero, he doesn't do subtlety. If he wanted to send you a message, it would come in the form of a parade, or a poem read by a naked actor, balancing a harp on his shoulder. No, this is something else. The quiet kind of dangerous. The kind that walks behind you, not in front. You don't touch the rose, you don't even move it. Just leave it on the corner of the bed like it might bite. You say nothing to the eunuch who brings your morning water, and he says nothing in return, which is normal. But still, you catch the flicker in his eyes when he sees the flower. Recognition maybe, or fear. You go about your day pretending not to feel the weight of it pressing into your thoughts like a splinter under the skin. Bathe, dress, walk the gardens, act like someone whose fate is not being negotiated in secret shadows. Domitia isn't in the garden. You notice that immediately. You always notice who's missing now. Livia hasn't been seen in 3 days. One of the Greek dancers has vanished too. They say she returned home. Everyone knows what that means. By mid-afternoon you retreat to the peristyle courtyard. It's empty. Not suspiciously so, just enough to feel wrong. There's a statue of a nymph beside the fountain, her face chipped, one breast missing. You sit beside her and pick at a fig, but your appetite's gone. That's when you hear the footsteps. Slow, soft, deliberate. You don't turn, not yet. You wait for the person to speak first. Do you know what that rose means? The voice is male, young, calm. Not one of the senators, not a eunuch. Someone unfamiliar, which is increasingly rare in this gilded prison. You glance over your shoulder. He's tall, dressed plainly, draped in ivory linen, no jewellery, no insignia. His face is unremarkable in the way that makes you look twice. Not forgettable, just hard to place. His eyes, though, sharp, curious, calculating. You say nothing. He smiles slightly. It means someone's watching, and they don't want you dead. Yet. Comforting, you reply dryly. He chuckles. You're clever. That's good. I'm not here to hurt you. And why are you here? To offer you something. He steps closer, lowering his voice. There are people in this palace who aren't here for Nero, who serve different interests, some of them in the Senate, others beyond Rome entirely. Traitors, you say. Patriots, he corrects. You stare at him. Why me? Because he likes you, the man says simply, and you're not stupid enough to confuse that with safety. He's not wrong, but that doesn't make him right. He doesn't ask you to do anything, not yet. Just says to keep your ears open, that if you ever need to reach him, you'll know how. He walks away before you can ask his name, just like that. The rose is still on your bed that night, and something shifts in you. Not trust. Not yet, but the awareness that there's another current beneath this palace. That you're not just a passenger anymore, you're being courted. A few days pass, quiet, strange days. Nero's away from the palace, visiting his coastal villa near Antium, where rumour says he's taken to swimming naked at midnight and composing tragedies about sea monsters. You're not invite. Neither are most of the concubines. You're told to rest, to indulge, which means stay out of sight, don't get in trouble, and don't forget your place. You roam the palace like a ghost. Rooms you've never been allowed in before now lie open, empty. Storage chambers filled with old armour and forgotten frescoes. A room with musical instruments you don't recognise, long flutes, curved lyres, something that might be a harp or a torture device. In one room you find scrolls, old ones, Poetry, plays, philosophies. You sit on the floor and read until your back aches and the oil lamp flickers low. One scroll is a lost play of Seneca. You recognize his name from whispers. He used to tutor Nero until he disappeared, or died, or retired. No one really knows. That night, a servant brings you wine that tastes different. Not bad, just unfamiliar. You drink only a little, enough to taste, not enough to lose yourself. You're learning. You fall asleep uneasy, not drunk, not exhausted, just stretched thin, like your mind is reaching into too many corners at once. And then, sometime after midnight, you're woken by whispers. Real ones, outside your door. You slide silently off the bed, bare feet against cold marble. Press your ear to the heavy wood. You can't make out words, but you catch a name. Yours. Then another name, Nero's. Then a pause. A woman's voice, low, almost a growl. Or, if she talks, we end her. You freeze. The footsteps fade. Silence returns. You don't sleep the rest of the night. In the morning, the rose is gone, replaced with a single pomegranate. No note, no explanation, just a fruit heavy with seeds and suggestion. Domitia finds you in the bath later. She lowers herself into the water beside you with practiced ease, her jewellery clicking softly. She doesn't look at you when she says, "Do you know what the pomegranate means?" You don't answer. She nods. It means someone thinks you've eaten from the underworld. You look down at the red seeds scattered across the surface of the water, like drops of blood that refuse to dissolve. Maybe you have. There are two of her. The version you see in paintings and ceremonies, radiant and still composed in that unnervingly serene way, and the version you see up close, in the corridors and shaded archways, when she doesn't know she's being watched. Or maybe she does. She always knows. That's the terrifying part. You spot her just before sunset, descending the stairs of the east colonnade. Her hair is coiled like a crown, dark and gleaming, laced with actual sapphires. Her robe is sheer at the shoulders, flowing around her ankles like mist, and her sandals, gilded with thread-thin gold, make no sound as she walks. She looks like a statue sculpted by someone too scared to make a mistake. Poppaea Sabina, the Empress, Nero's wife. You don't know why you were summoned to meet her. You only know the note arrived sealed in purple wax, handed to you by a trembling eunuch who refused to meet your eyes. She asked for you, personally, he said, and now here you are, walking toward a woman whose reputation drips with quiet violence. They say she bathed in donkey milk, that her skin glowed because she refused to age, that Nero married her while still bound to his first wife, and divorced that wife in a heartbeat, that he later kicked Poppaea in the stomach while she was pregnant, and that she died from it. But here she is, very much alive, very much watching you. She offers you a thin, elegant smile as you approach. "So," she says, voice silk wrapped around a blade, "you're the girl who sings without ever opening her mouth." You blink. "I don't understand." She laughs, soft and humorless. "Oh, but you do. You've made yourself indispensable. That's clever, very clever. Men like Nero value mirrors more than women. And you reflect him perfectly. You're not sure what to say. Anything might be the wrong thing. She gestures for you to walk with her, and you obey because you have no choice. You follow her through the colonnade, past carved busts of gods with Nero's face and potted laurels that probably cost more than your childhood home. "I've seen them come and go," she says lightly. "Girls like you. Smart enough to rise, not quite smart enough to know when to stop climbing." You glance sideways at her. "Is that a warning?" Poppaea turns her head just enough to meet your gaze. Her eyes are beautiful, cold, and very awake. It's an observation. You keep walking. The marble under your feet feels suddenly unstable, like it could collapse into a hidden pit at any moment. "You've caught his attention," she says, "which means you've caught mine." There's something else in her voice now, not just jealousy, though it's there, flickering behind the polish, but something more dangerous. Calculation. "I have no intention of replacing you," you say. And it's true. You're not that stupid. You don't want the laurel crown if it means a target stitched to your back. "Good," she says, "because you can't. And if you try..." She doesn't finish the sentence. She doesn't have to. The unspoken words hang between you, heavier than gold. The walk ends in a small chamber, lavish but not grand, just private. 2 couches, a wine pitcher, a bowl of pomegranate seeds. She sits and gestures for you to do the same. You comply. She pours you wine, watches you drink, then leans forward, her voice low. "You're being watched by more than just my husband," she says. "There are eyes in this palace that belong to no one, not to Rome, not even to the gods. Your pulse skips." "I don't understand," you say. Poppia smiles again, and it's almost pitying. "You will, if you live long enough." A servant enters then, her personal attendant, you assume, and whispers something in her ear. She nods, rising. "Enjoy the wine," she says. "You'll be needing the strength." Then she's gone, and you're left sitting there, staring at the bowl of blood-red seeds, wondering whether this is her version of kindness or a test. Maybe both. Maybe that's the same thing here. You don't finish the wine. That night, back in your chamber, Domitia appears again. Without knocking, without warning. She doesn't speak, just sits at the edge of your bed like a ghost. "Poppia talked to you," she says. You nod. "She threatened you?" You hesitate. "So she made observations," Domitia chuckles. "Yes, that's her way. She kills slowly, with conversation." You rub your temples. "Why now? I've been here for months." "'Cause he's drifting," Domitia says simply. "When Nero grows bored of something, he either destroys it or gives it too much power." You think of the actor playing the traitor. The wine, the rose, the pomegranate. Too much power, too quickly. You ask Domitia a question that's been brewing for days now. What would happen if Nero died? Domitia stiffens. Not much, just enough to notice. She answers slowly. If he died, Rome would feast, but only for a moment. Then they'd turn on each other like dogs. She stands. Don't ask that question again, not even here, not even in whispers. After she leaves, you sit for a long time in silence, staring at the mural on your ceiling, the dove still chained to the clouds. Your heart feels like it's growing heavier with each passing day, not from sorrow, from weight, from the crushing reality of being noticed by the wrong people at the worst possible time. You remember the man in the courtyard, the whisper of rebellion, of patriots. You remember Poppeia's eyes, and how she said you'd need strength. You wonder which of them is trying to save you, and which is setting the stage for your fall. Either way, you're in the play now, and there's no way to exit without someone else writing your final scene. Your feet hurt. That's the first thing you notice as you step onto the cold marble floor of the private theatre. They've stuffed you into shoes that weren't made for walking, never mind performing. And the stage beneath you is slick with petals, yes, literal flower petals, scattered so thickly they crunch like snow underfoot. It would be romantic if it weren't so absurd, or terrifying. You're not alone. 7 concubines have been summoned tonight, all arranged like living dolls in a semicircle on stage, each in a costume more ridiculous than the last. One girl is dressed as a muse, another as a storm cloud, and someone, poor thing, is painted entirely in silver and told to stand motionless like a statue. She's already swaying. You? You're Aphrodite. Naturally. The costume is sheer to the point of obscenity, with seafoam-coloured drapery and a diadem that pinches your skull. They've oiled your skin until you shine. You smell like honey and crushed myrrh. The eunuchs have spent hours turning you into something soft and divine. And now here you are, standing in front of an audience of 1. Nero lounges at the edge of the stage, sipping wine from a goblet the size of a small basin. He's grinning like a boy watching fireflies, his eyes wide and expectant. This is his private theatre, only a few seats, velvet cushions, enough space for him and perhaps a senator or 2 if he's in the mood for company. Tonight, it's just him. The play is his invention, of course. A retelling of the Judgment of Paris. Except Paris is played by Nero and the goddesses are his concubines. You'd laugh if it wasn't all so painfully real. The script is barely a script. Each of you is to plead your case before the Emperor of Love, argue why you deserve the golden apple, why you are the most beautiful, the most divine, the most desirable. It's not just theatre, it's a battle. And you've been given a speech to recite. In Greek. You hate Greek. You stand in your spot, palms slick, heart banging against your ribs as the other girls go first. The muse recites a poem, trembling with each stanza. The storm cloud dances. Badly. The statue remains frozen, which is impressive considering she might faint. Then it's your turn. You step forward. The petals shift underfoot. The lights are hot on your face. You take a breath and begin. Your voice doesn't shake. That surprises you. The words are foreign, but they come slow and clear, like something you'd practiced in another life. You talk about beauty, desire, pleasure. You spin metaphors from seafoam and sunlight. You keep your eyes on Nero, who watches with the fascination of a child watching a puppet show. At one point he claps, just once, but it echoes. You finish, step back and wait. Nero stands. The entire room stiffens. He walks across the stage, robes dragging like a tide behind him. One by one he passes the other girls, humming to himself. He stops before the silver-painted statue girl touches her cheek. She flinches. Then he turns to you, lifts the golden apple, solid gold, heavy, warm from his palm, and places it in your hands. "There," he says, grinning. "Aphrodite wins again." The others bow. You bow. Everyone claps, except Nero, who just watches you like he's sizing up his own reflection. Later, after the show, you're summoned to his chambers again. This time it's not about sex. It's about something worse, conversation. He wants to talk about art, about legacy, about being misunderstood. "You know," he says, lounging shirtless on a divan, "they think I'm mad." He doesn't wait for a reply. "They think I burn Rome and play the lyre like some drunk Orpheus. But what do they know? They'll remember me long after their names are dust." You nod. Carefully. He leans forward. "You think I'm mad?" "No," you lie. He beams. "I knew you were special." You think he's going to say more. Instead, he closes his eyes and begins to hum. A soft, eerie melody that makes the hairs on your neck rise. It's the same tune you've heard before, echoing through the hallways late at night. The one that sounds too old to belong to him. "Where did you learn that?" you ask. He opens one eye. "A dream," he says, "and that's all you get. You're dismissed sometime near dawn." You walk the empty halls in silence, too wired to sleep, too tired to think. As you pass a curtained alcove, a figure steps out. It's the man from the garden. This time he doesn't smile. "You need to leave," he says, low and fast. "Soon." "Why?" "There's a plot," he says, "against Poppaea." You blink. "I'm not involved." "You are now," he says. Everyone close to him is a suspect. Everyone close to her, a threat. You feel the air go thin. "She knows?" you ask. "She suspects," he replies, "and she's angry." You remember her eyes, cold and too calm. What do I do? He steps back into shadow. Survive. He's gone before you can respond. You don't go back to your room, not immediately. You sit in the servants' courtyard, tucked behind the fig trees, and watch the sky shift from black to purple to pale blue. You sit there until the world starts waking up again. Later that morning, a gift appears on your bed. The golden apple, engraved with the words, "To the fairest." And tucked beneath it, a second item, a dagger, small, slim, hidden, inside a sheath of embroidered silk. No note, just a choice, or a warning, maybe both. The palace isn't quiet at night, it only pretends to be. During the day, everything screams. The marble shines too brightly, the eunuchs bark orders in harsh tones, the sandals glitter courtiers slap the ground with the anxious rhythm. But after dark, it shifts. The sounds become thinner, stretched out, drawn into the spaces between the torch flickers. You can hear things if you listen long enough. The distant rustle of silk, murmurs leaking through the cracks in stone, a door closing just a little too softly to be innocent. Lately you've started listening, not because you want to, but because you have to. You sleep with the dagger under your pillow now. You check it every night. Still there, still wrapped in embroidered silk, still unanswered. You haven't told Domitia, you haven't told anyone. It's a secret you carry like a blister, and just like a blister, you can't decide whether to cover it or pop it. Nero hasn't called for you since the play. At first you're relieved, but that slowly gives way to a low, steady dread. You don't know if you're being avoided, forgotten, or watched. You begin to notice small things. New guards outside your quarters, a serving girl you've never seen before folding your robe with too much precision, a dish of wine left at your door even though you didn't ask for it. You pour that one out. On the third night of silence, the whispers start. First from Domitia. She appears late as always, slipping into your chamber like a shadow wearing gold. "He's distant," she says, unprompted. "That means something's brewing." "What kind of something?" you ask. She shrugs. It's always blood eventually. Then she studies you, like she's trying to read your next thought. Her eyes flick to your pillow, and for one terrifying second you're sure she knows about the dagger. But she says nothing. She just exhales and leans closer. You should be careful. The quieter the Emperor is, the louder his madness becomes. You want to ask her something, what she's seen, what she suspects, but she's gone again, and the room feels colder when she leaves. The next night you wake to moaning. Not the kind of moaning that comes from Nero's parties, or the exaggerated pleasure of concubines who know how to perform ecstasy. This is different, lower, thicker. It's the sound of someone trying not to scream. You follow it. Barefoot, robe clutched tight, moving like a ghost past curtained doorways and flickering torchlight. The palace is a maze at night. Walls that shift, halls that turn you around, doors that weren't there yesterday. But your ears lead you down a passage you've never walked before, past a statue of Minerva with her head missing. You find it. The room. You stop at the threshold. You don't enter. Inside there's a man on the floor. Not a prisoner. Not a servant. A senator. His face is bruised, blood caked around his mouth. His tunic has been ripped. He's kneeling, barely upright, and before him stands Nero, in full armour. The Emperor's calm, too calm. He lifts something from the table beside him, a branding iron, you think, and turns to a man beside him. A guard? No, not just a guard, a praetorian. Nero murmurs something. The iron is pressed against the senator's shoulder. The man doesn't scream. He bites into his own hand instead. You stagger back, and that's when you realise you're not alone in the hallway. A voice behind you says, "You shouldn't be here." It's Poppaea. Her expression is unreadable, regal, cold. She's wrapped in midnight blue fabric, her hair braided into a crown that sparkles with moonlight. You open your mouth to explain, to lie, but she simply raises a finger to her lips. You both listen to the muffled sound of flesh burning. Then she whispers, "Walk with me." You obey, again, you always do. She leads you to the garden where the moonlight turns everything silver. You sit beneath the olive trees. "You saw too much," she says. "I didn't mean to." She smiles faintly. "No one ever does." There's a long silence. You wonder if she'll have you killed, or worse, disappeared. One day you'll just stop being mentioned. That's how things end here. But instead, she says something stranger. "He's getting worse." You glance at her. Then why stay? She meets your gaze, and for the first time, there's something human in her eyes. "I carry his child." The world seems to pause. You hadn't known. No one had. She wasn't showing yet. But now that she's said it, you see it. The stiffness in her movements. The faint swelling beneath her sash. She closes her eyes. "If he falls, I fall too, so I protect him, even from himself." You nod. Slowly. The garden rustles around you, and for a moment it almost feels safe. Then she stands. "And I protect what's mine," she adds, her voice harder now. You watch her go, not sure whether that was a warning or a promise. Back in your chamber, you lie awake for hours. The dagger now a weight under your pillow, the golden apple glinting faintly in the moonlight beside it. Somewhere deep in the palace, Nero sings. The melody is slow, off-key, haunting. You wonder if it's a lullaby for himself or a requiem for everyone else. Later that night you dream of fire, but when you wake, it isn't a dream. There's smoke in the air, distant screams, a glow on the horizon. You run to the window, heart hammering. Rome is burning. You've never heard a city scream before. Not like this, not all at once. The sound isn't just one thing, it's 1,000 things layered into chaos. Babies wailing, men shouting, irons scraping on stone, horses shrieking in panic, the dry crackling of wood snapping apart under flame. And beneath it all a low thunderous moan, like the earth itself is mourning. You stare out the window, and the world is orange. Not the soft orange of torchlight or sunset, but something harsher, brighter, angry. The fire consumes rooftops and temples, climbing walls like ivy, leaping between homes as if it knows exactly where it's going. Smoke roils through the streets in thick, coiling plumes, swallowing everything in its path. Rome is bleeding light, and the air is choked with ash. You can't move at first. Your body is trying to process the contradiction, how you're standing in this pristine palace of white marble and silk, and yet just beyond its walls, People are dying by the hundreds, possibly thousands. You can't even begin to count. There's shouting in the hallway. Eunuchs, servants, guards. One rushes past your room without knocking. Another slams a door somewhere nearby. You hear Nero's name spoken. Once, twice, each time more frantic. You pull a robe around yourself and push into the corridor. The hallway smells of burning oil and fear. Domitia is there already, her hair half undone, barefoot and livid. She grabs your wrist without a word and pulls you down the corridor. "Where are we going?" you ask. "To the high terrace. He wants us assembled." He. Of course. It's always him. The fire's getting closer by the minute. You can smell it now, actual wood and tar and smoke, sharp and dry and ancient. Like the bones of the city are burning, not just its skin. You climb the steps to the terrace, one of the palace's highest levels, with a view that stretches across the rooftops of Rome. And what you see stops your heart cold. The fire is everywhere. From this height, you can trace its path through the city like a fever map. The Forum is alight. The old market is gone. The temples of Saturn and Vesta are blackened silhouettes. The Subura, your old neighbourhood, is a single smear of red and gold pulsing with heat. You feel the burn of it even from here, like it knows your name. Nero's already on the terrace. He stands near the balustrade, arms spread wide, eyes glinting with tears. Not sorrow, ecstasy. He's dressed like a performer, flowing robes, sandals laced to his knees, a laurel crown too fresh not to have been plucked just moments ago. In one hand he holds a lyre, in the other a scroll. And then he begins to sing. You don't know the words, it's in Greek. Something about Troy, about gods and vengeance and rebirth. His voice is strong, melodic, you hate how beautiful it sounds. A small group has gathered behind him. Concubines, musicians, senators, guards. No one dares interrupt him, not even as the city dies below. You step to the edge, staring down at the chaos. People are flooding the streets, dragging children, goats, carts, whatever they can carry. Some are naked, others are wrapped in soot-streaked cloaks. You see a woman fall, then vanish beneath the crowd. You don't see her rise again. Domitia murmurs at your side. He's going to blame it on the Christians. You glance at her. Why? She shrugs. Because someone has to take the blame. Nero finishes his song, and silence falls. Except for the fire. He turns, smiling. This is the will of the gods, he says. The old Rome must burn, so the new Rome may rise. No one claps, not one soul. Oh, but they don't argue either. You realise then just how deep the fear goes. Later, after the fire has eaten through half the city and the sky is thick with ash, you're summoned again, not to the terrace, but to a private garden deep within the Domus Aurea. A garden you didn't even know existed. It smells like wet stone and scorched roses. Nero sits on a stone bench, fanning himself lazily. You sit across from him, heart still pounding. He says nothing for a long time, just stares at the smoky horizon, as if waiting for a phoenix to rise from it. Then, "You were born in the Subura, weren't you?" You nod. "It's gone now?" You say nothing. "I've always hated that place," he says softly. "Too many poor people, too much noise, like rats crawling over each other." You clench your jaw. "You know what I'm going to build," he continues, his voice dreamy. "A golden city. Streets paved with marble. Statues of the gods on every corner. A theatre that stretches to the sky. And the people?" He blinks. "They'll be grateful, once they understand. You want to scream, you want to grab him and shake him and show him what he's done. But you don't. Because you still want to live, and because part of you knows it wouldn't change anything." He looks at you smiling. "You'll help me design it," he says. "The new Rome. It isn't a request." You leave the garden in silence, your mind buzzing. That night, you return to your room and find a new robe waiting for you. Black, embroidered with gold thread in the shape of laurel leaves. And on your pillow, a scroll, a decree. You're to appear tomorrow beside the Emperor as he addresses the Senate. To speak of the fire, to vouch for his sorrow, to lie. You sit on the edge of your bed, robe pulled in your lap, scroll in your hand. Outside, the city still burns. Inside, you do too. The smoke doesn't leave. Even when the fires finally die down, even when the city stops glowing like a molten wound, Even when the charred bodies are cleared from the streets, the smoke still lingers. It clings to your hair, your skin, your lungs. Rome smells like memory now, one soaked in ash and regret. And everywhere you walk, people are looking for someone to blame. Which is why, today, you're wearing mourning black and standing at the Emperor's side, face powdered pale and lips bloodless, like grief has drained every ounce of colour from you. A carefully constructed lie, just like everything else about this day. The Senate chamber is packed. Senators, scribes, advisors, and their shadow fill every marble bench. The heat is stifling. The roof is closed to block out the still rising smoke, and the air inside feels like old wool. Heavy, itchy, suffocating. You try not to breathe too deeply. Even your heartbeat feels like it's sweating. Nero sits on his throne, flanked by guards dressed more for theatre than battle. You stand just behind him, close enough to feel his robes brush your side when he shifts. His mood today is sombre, an actor playing tragedy with perfect restraint. There's no crown on his head, just a single laurel leaf tucked behind one ear. The humble god. He rises. A hush spreads like fog. "My lords, wake your..." he begins, voice calm, almost mournful. "My heart breaks with yours." He pauses, lets that hang, like a bead of sap waiting to fall. "We have lost so much," he continues. "Temples, homes, lives. But we must not lose each other. Not now." You fight the urge to roll your eyes. He's very good at this. The performance, the grief, the half-mad vision of himself as both victim and saviour. He's not speaking to the Senate. He's speaking to history. "The gods have tested us," Nero says. "And now, we rise." Then comes the turn, and you feel it before he says it, that pivot from sorrow to blame. "I have discovered the cause," he says. Whispers ripple through the chamber. "A cult," he says, "foreign, un-Roman, dangerous. They refuse our gods, reject our temples. They light secret fires and claim a kingdom beyond our own." You inhale. Here it comes. They call themselves Christiani. There it is, the scapegoat. "They began the fire," Nero says. "They danced in the flames while our homes burned. That's a lie, you know it, everyone here knows it." But lies have momentum when spoken by emperors. Nero turns toward you now, eyes wide with stage sorrow. "Speak, little dove," he says. "Tell them what you saw." You step forward. All eyes turn to you. You've rehearsed this, not with words, not on paper, but in silence, in glances, in the way a knife slips beneath the skin without drawing attention, until it's too late. "My lords," you begin, voice even, soft. "I was there, at his side. As the fires rose, you pause, breathe. We prayed, we wept, and we saw them, hooded, chanting, unafraid of the flames. One held a cross of wood." That last part was Nero's addition. You finish your short speech, bow your head just enough, and step back. You're not applauded, but no one questions you either. That's the power of fear. Afterward, in the private halls, Nero smiles at you. "You are perfect," he says, and offers you his hand like a reward. "The people will believe you." You don't take his hand, you just nod. Later, you walk alone through the burned quarters of the palace, sections untouched by wealth or preservation. Servants' quarters, kitchens, storerooms. The air is thick with soot. The walls are still warm. You pass one chamber where you see a group of Christian prisoners, chained and shivering, guarded by two disinterested soldiers. One of the women looks up as you pass. She says nothing, but her eyes say everything. She saw your speech. She knows your lie. You don't flinch. You keep walking. Domitia finds you that evening. She's half drunk and unusually sentimental. "You were very good today," she says, toying with a strand of your hair. "Even I almost believed you." "I didn't ask to do it," you murmur. She snorts. "Neither did I, years ago, when I stood there for a different lie." You look at her. "What did you lie about?" She holds up her wine cup in mock salute. "That I loved him." She downs the rest and leans back on your couch like a cat curling into a soft grave. The next few days are chaos, arrests, torture, public executions. Christians are rounded up by the dozens. Some you've seen before, servants, scribes, even a young boy who used to sweep the garden paths. Now they're being flayed, burned, fed to wild dogs in the arena. You hear rumours that Nero plans to tie some to stakes and set them alight to illuminate his next banquet. You're not invited to that one. That might be the only mercy he's given you. One evening, you return to your chamber and find something under your pillow. Not a gift, not a threat, a note, folded tightly, sealed with a smear of wax that bears no insignia. Inside, just a single line. There are still people worth saving. Even you. You stare at the note until the candle burns out, and then, for the first time in weeks, you cry. Not for yourself, for them, for the ones who burn, for the ones who won't be remembered, for the ones who never got to lie to survive. You learn that the human body doesn't burn all at once. It starts with the hair, quick and vicious, like dry leaves catching flame, then the skin blistering and peeling back like parchment. The fat catches next, and that's when the real smoke begins, black and thick and foul, not like the sweet incense burned in temples, but like something angry and ancient rising out of the earth. You know this now, not because you wanted to, but because Nero made sure you'd see it. You're brought to the garden by torchlight, not told why, not asked if you'd prefer to stay behind. No one's ever asked you what you prefer. By now, you know better than to expect it. The guards say nothing as they escort you through the winding corridors, past open rooms glowing with lamp oil, and echoing laughter. It's a strange contrast, this blend of festivity and death. One long, endless performance, like Rome's heart is made of gold-painted rot. You hear the crowd before you see them. They're drunk, some laughing, some already too far gone to walk straight. Nobles, artists, philosophers with wine-dark mouths, eyes glazed with whatever mixture of pleasure and dread is fashionable tonight. They're gathered around the Emperor's private racecourse, now repurposed into a spectacle space, a place where horses once galloped, a place now lined with poles, with people tied to them. You stop, you can't help it. You weren't prepared, no one can be. Not for this. The prisoners, dozens of them, are chained, dressed in thin tunics soaked with oil. Some are praying, some are weeping. One girl is singing. The tune's familiar. A lullaby from the Subura, something mothers hum when they think the world is too cruel for words. You realise slowly that she's the same servant girl who used to bring you figs. You nearly collapse. Then Nero arrives, of course, draped in white, barefoot, crowned in roses. The effect is jarring. He looks like a priest walking to a wedding, not a massacre. His face is serene, proud. He raises a cup of wine. "Let there be light," he says. The guards touch flame to the wicks, and Rome lights itself on fire again. You don't look away. You can't, because looking away would mean admitting you're not part of this anymore. And you are. You're complicit. You stood before the Senate. You told them a lie that lit this match. Domitia appears beside you at some point. She says nothing, just slips her hand into yours. Her fingers are shaking. So are yours. You hold on anyway. Nero watches the burning like a man admiring his garden. He smiles, swirls his wine, says something about the poetry of purification. One of the senators nods along, eyes wide, sweat pouring down his face. You wonder if anyone else feels like they're watching the end of the world. Afterward, you're led back to your room in silence. The sky above Rome is red, even though the fires are lower now. The smoke hangs like a curtain across the stars. Everything smells like cooked meat and damp stone. You pull off your robe, crawl into bed, and lie there, fully awake, your heart a stone in your chest. The next morning you vomit. Twice. The smell is still in your nose and your throat. You rinse your mouth until your gums bleed. You barely eat. You say nothing. At noon, Nero sends you a gift. A necklace, rubies set in gold. The stones glisten like fresh blood. No note, just the understanding. You wear it because to refuse would be an insult. But when you catch yourself in the mirror, you don't recognize the girl staring back. She looks beautiful. Powerful. Hollow. Later that evening, the man from the garden, he still hasn't given you a name, finds you again. This time in the hallway outside the bath chamber, where steam curls into the air like ghost fingers. He doesn't waste time. "We need to talk," he says. You nod. No one stops you as you follow him. That's the problem with being one of Nero's favourites. People look the other way, and sometimes that's worse than being watched. He leads you into an abandoned part of the palace beneath the baths. Dust covers everything, and the walls sweat from the heat above. There's a flickering lamp and a half-broken couch. You sit. "The Senate's beginning to turn," he says. Quietly. But it's happening. What Nero did last night, was theatre, you say, and they applauded. They don't all want to, they're just waiting for someone else to move first. You stare at him. You want to kill him. No, he says carefully. We want to end him. The gods can deal with his soul. You laugh, bitterly. You're using the same gods he uses to justify burning people alive. He looks away. So why tell me? Because he trusts you, the man says. And people trust you because he does. You can help tip the scales. You're already part of the story. You lean back against the wall. I don't know who I am anymore, you say quietly. He nods. That's how they break us. But it's also how they miss the pieces when we start putting ourselves back together. He hands you something, not a weapon this time. A list, names, dates, meetings places, people you recognise, a few you don't. Then he leaves. You sit there alone in the dim light, staring at the parchment, trying not to see the flames still dancing behind your eyes. That night, you return to your room and find Nero already waiting. He's seated on your bed, barefoot, chewing a grape slowly like he has all the time in the world. You saw the light show, he asks, grinning. You nod. It was beautiful, wasn't it? You say nothing. He stands, walks toward you, runs a finger down your arm. I think you're ready, he says. For what? For more? Then he kisses you, softly, like you're something delicate. You close your eyes and think of the girl tied to the post, of the wine, of the dagger still tucked under your mattress, and you pretend. Because pretending is the only thing keeping you alive. Morning comes late. The sky above Rome still looks sick, grey with ash, streaked faintly orange from the fires that smoulder at the city's edges. From your balcony the air tastes metallic like rust and regret. You breathe it anyway. You've learned not to flinch at the smell of destruction. You've learned that the world doesn't pause when it's dying. People still eat breakfast. Slaves still sweep marble floors. Nero still sings. He's been singing all week. You hear him now through the open archway, that soft, reedy tenor echoing from the far end of the Domus Aurea. You know the melody by heart already. It's from his new divine composition, a hymn he wrote about himself. He's called it the apotheosis of Nero. You could laugh if it weren't so terrifying. Word spreads fast. Nero's planning to announce his divinity publicly. He's going to tell Rome he's not just emperor, he's a god. Jupiter reborn. Apollo resurrected. A man who can burn a city and still be adored. You'd think even the Senate would choke on that, but no. You've seen them. You've seen men bend the knee before him, eyes bright with something between awe and terror. If fear lasts long enough, it becomes faith. You're summoned before noon. No warning, just a soft knock. A eunuch bowing so deeply he might as well be begging forgiveness. He requests your presence in the Hall of Reflections. Requests. That word means nothing here. The hall is vast, circular, lined with mirrors polished so perfectly you can't tell where you end and your reflection begins. The air hums faintly from the hundreds of oil lamps suspended from the ceiling. You can smell the wax and smoke, but beneath it, incense, sweet and cloying, meant to make everything sacred. Nero stands at the centre, barefoot, wrapped in white. His robe drapes from one shoulder, leaving half his chest bare. Gold paint traces his collarbones. He looks like a statue come to life, one carved by an artist too frightened to say no. Around him kneel priests. Or what pass for priests now? Men dressed in white, heads shaved, eyes lowered. You recognise one of them, Pythia, the former oracle from Delphi. Her expression is unreadable. Nero smiles when he sees you. My goddess of truth, he says. You bow, slightly. Enough. Do you know why I called you here? He asks. You shake your head. Because gods need witnesses, he says softly. And you, little dove, have always seen me as I truly am. You don't argue. You don't remind him that you've seen him weep, rage, and order death with the same breath. You just nod. He gestures to a pedestal behind him. On it rests a bronze basin filled with oil, and beside it a golden crown shaped like the rays of the sun. Today, Nero says, the world will see me ascend. He raises his arms. Two attendants step forward, anointing him with oil, slow and deliberate. His skin gleams under the lamplight. Then he turns to you. Come, he commands. You move forward. Your reflection follows you from 100 angles, bending, shimmering, multiplying until you can't tell which version of you is real. Hold the crown, he says. It's heavier than it looks. When you lift it, the weight drags your arms down. He lowers his head. For a heartbeat, you hesitate. You remember the dagger under your mattress, the list of names tucked into your robe. The man in the garden said, "You'll know when it's time. Is this it? Could you? Would you?" But you don't move. You set the crown gently on his head. When he looks up, you see something in his eyes that almost frightens you more than his madness. Belief. He believes this. Every word, every lie. He spreads his arms and begins to chant. Greek first, then Latin. His voice fills the hall, echoing off the mirrors, bouncing between worlds. The priests respond in chorus. Their rhythm builds. One starts to drum. The air thickens with incense until you can't breathe. And then, abruptly, silence. Nero turns, his face shining with oil and sweat, and addresses the invisible crowd beyond the hall. "I am the light of Rome," he says. "I am reborn." The priests bow until their foreheads touch the marble. You remain standing. You're not sure if that's courage or stupidity. Afterward, he dismisses everyone but you. The priests file out silently, robes whispering like the hiss of a snake's tongue. When the doors close, he exhales. The god vanishes. The man returns. "Was it convincing?" he asks. You look at him. "They believe," you say. "And you?" You hesitate. "You're unforgettable." He laughs, delighted. "That's enough." He pours wine, hands you a cup, sits on the floor like a boy. "Do you know what I dream of?" he asks. You shake your head. World remade by beauty, no pain, no aging, just music and fire. And he drinks deeply, then leans closer. "Would you die for such a world?" You set your cup down carefully. "Would you?" He smiles and the moment passes. That night you can't sleep. You pace your room until dawn. At sunrise you step onto the balcony and see black smoke still rising from the outskirts of the city. You think about gods and mortals, and how they blur together when power burns long enough. A dove lands on the railing. Its feathers are grey with ash. You reach out and it doesn't move, just stares at you. Then it coos once, softly, and flies away. Behind you someone whispers your name. You turn. It's Domitia, pale, sweating, her voice shaking. "It started," she says. "What has?" "The rebellion." The word hits the air like a spark. For the first time in months, you feel something like hope. Or maybe it's just fear with a better costume. Your hands are trembling as you wrap the dagger in linen. Not because you're afraid of it, but because you're afraid of what it means now. It's not just a secret tucked beneath your mattress anymore. It's a question that demands an answer. The kind that reshapes you no matter how you choose. Domitia didn't explain much. She couldn't. Someone might have been listening. But the words were clear. It started. The rebellion is no longer a whisper in the hallway or a smuggled note. It's real now. Breathing, growing. You keep your face neutral as you walk the halls, because your expression is being watched. Always. By guards, by slaves, by the invisible network of Poppeia's loyalists. Even by the statues, it sometimes feels like. Their marble eyes track you as you pass, as if they're waiting to see what you'll become. That morning, Nero summons you again. He's in the bath naturally, lounging in a pool of rosewater and milk, his body floating like something not quite alive. A servant scrubs his arms lazily. Another brushes his curls. "Come in," he says, grinning. "The water's perfect." You sit at the edge instead. That feels like enough of a boundary for now. He watches you closely. "You've been quiet." "I'm tired." "Of me?" You shake your head. "Of fire. Of mourning." He sighs theatrically. "Yes, yes, the city is so dramatic about being rebuilt." He gestures toward a stack of papyrus rolls beside the bath. "Plans for the new Domus Aurea," he says proudly. "Larger than anything before. The vestibule alone will be tall enough to house a statue of me, 30 feet high." You smile tightly. "Modest." He laughs, splashing water. "You understand me." You don't. Not really. But you understand how to survive him. He sinks lower into the bath. "I had a dream last night," he says. "You were in it." You tense. "You were wearing armour," he says, "like Minerva. Blood on your hands." He pauses. "Was it mine?" You look at him. Do you want it to be? He laughs again, too loud, like he's trying to convince himself it's funny. You're clever, he says. That's why I keep you. You're dismissed shortly after, with a kiss to the hand and a robe soaked in rosewater. That night, the man from the garden finally returns. This time he gives you a name, Cassianus, a senator's nephew, former military. Too young to remember Caligula, but old enough to know how quickly emperors become ghosts. The plan is in motion, he says. The Senate's begun to splinter. So have the guards. Poppaea? She suspects something, but she doesn't know who. You nod. What do you need from me? Information, he says, and presents. You frown. Presents? You're close to him, he says. He trusts you. When the time comes, he'll look for comfort. You'll be there. You realise then what he's saying. I'm not going to kill him, you say, sir. No, Cassianus replies, but you'll hold his hand while we do. Tyranny. You don't bleed for 2 weeks, is the second thing you notice. The first is the smell, your body changing in small, invisible ways. Your stomach turns at the scent of fish. Your breasts ache. You feel off-centre, dizzy, even when standing still. At first, you blame the smoke, the tension, the weight of pretending. But then you count the days, and your hands start trembling again, but for a very different reason. You don't tell anyone. Not Domitia, not Cassianus, not even yourself, not in any way that feels real. You just sit with it quietly, while Rome spins madly around you. Poppaea reappears, of course. She always does. She visits you in your chamber without warning. No guards, no announcement. Just a flicker of perfume and her silhouette in your doorway. You've been distant, she says. I've been resting. She enters, touches a strand of your hair. Rest is for the forgotten. You're not forgotten. You want to tell her about the child, about the confusion blooming inside you like a bruise. You don't. Instead, you ask, "Are you happy?" She laughs, a sharp, crystalline sound. Happiness is for peasants and poets. She eyes you for a moment, and you feel her gaze linger at your waist. She knows, or suspects. She says nothing about it. Instead, she murmurs, "If you carry his child, you'll be both treasure and threat." Then she leaves, and you sit very still. Days pass. The tension in the palace grows thicker. The guards are less attentive. The praetorians avoid eye contact. You hear rumours that several legions have refused Nero's orders, that a general in Gaul is gaining power. Cassianus confirms it all. The collapse is coming, he says. All we need is a moment. You ask him, "Oh, what happens after?" Chaos, he says honestly, but chaos with a chance. You ask, "And the child?" He doesn't answer. That night you dream of fire again, but this time it isn't the city burning, it's Nero. And you're watching him, one hand on your belly, the other on the blade. When you wake, your mouth tastes like smoke. A week later, Nero falls asleep in your lap. He's drunk, too much wine, too many dreams. He rambled about becoming a star, about ascending to the heavens and replacing one of the lesser constellations. "I'll be brighter than Jupiter," he mumbled. And now he sleeps, breathing softly, like a child. His head is warm, heavy. Your hand hovers just above his chest. You think it would be easy. Then you think, nothing about this is easy. You don't kill him, you let him sleep. Because if you do it now, the blame falls on you. But if you wait, someone else will. And the world will applaud. You sit there until the candle burns low, one hand resting on your stomach, the other still hovering, uncertain. Tomorrow, you tell yourself. Tomorrow everything changes. The palace smells like rain. Not real rain, of course. Rome is still choking on ash. But the scent pumped through the halls from some hidden pipework. Perfumed water laced with crushed myrtle and violet. It's Nero's newest obsession, weather illusions. "If I can't control the sky," he said last week, sipping wine with rose petals floating in it, "then I'll make it obey me indoors." Now, every room whispers with mist and artificial clouds, while outside the city starves in its own soot. You haven't told anyone yet. Not about the pregnancy, not about the nausea that hits you in waves, not about the way your breasts ache, or how food tastes sharper, saltier, like your senses are being rewired by something inside you. But your body is already betraying you. You've caught 2 eunuchs staring at your belly. Domitia avoids your gaze when she pours your tea. Even Poppaea has gone quiet, her usual dry barbs replaced with long silences. A few nights ago she brushed past you in the hallway and said barely above a whisper, "He'll tire of you the way he tired of me." You wanted to respond, but her eyes told you it wasn't a warning, it was a prophecy. This morning you're summoned again, not to Nero's bedchamber or the garden, or even the theatre. You're led to a part of the palace you didn't know existed, a tall, narrow corridor behind the old armory, cold and damp, the walls lined with mosaics of wolves devouring children. At the end is a room you've only heard about in whispers, the Whispering Hall. It's said Nero used to bring senators here when he wanted the walls to listen. The acoustics are so precise that a single barbabias echoes like thunder. Secrets spoken here tend to be heard again, on scrolls, in dungeons, on the lips of spies. Inside, two people wait, Poppaea and Pythia, the former oracle, now wrapped in deep blue, her hands tattooed with lines of prophecy no one dares to read anymore. You step inside, no one speaks for a long time, then Poppaea says, "You're with child." It's not a question, you say nothing. Pythia steps forward. Her fingers are cool as she places them on your wrist, just over your pulse. She closes her eyes. "You carry a boy," she says. You exhale like someone punched the breath out of you. Poppaea's eyes go cold. She moves toward the window, looking out over the garden, where the last of the roses bloom. "Nero will believe it's a sign," she says. "A legacy. A divine child born from the ashes." You feel your spine stiffen. "He'll protect me." Poppaea turns. "He'll own you. And if he tires of the idea of fatherhood, he'll erase you. Quietly, thoroughly." You know she's right. You've seen him discard people the way he discards costumes and poems and cities. Pythia steps between you. "There's another option." You stare at her. "Run?" She nods once. "There are allies, farther than Gaul. East, Egypt, perhaps. Or beyond." "Rome doesn't let concubines go," you whisper. "Not concubines," Poppaea says, "but mothers of heirs. That's trickier." Her voice is brittle now. She's jealous. Of you, of the child, of the piece of Nero you carry like a sickness. "I won't help you," she says, "but I won't stop you either." Then she's gone. Pythia lingers. "He dreams of immortality," she says, "but what he's created is something hungrier, a myth that will swallow him." You nod. Your hands go to your stomach. That night, Nero sings again. You listen from a balcony above the banquet hall, half-shadowed behind a silk curtain. He's draped in a gold robe, glittering under torchlight, a lyre in his lap. The room is full of drunk men clapping like idiots. Souls? They don't care about the song, they care about survival. He sings of gods who rise from the grave, of phoenixes burning only to be reborn, of kings who live forever in the mouths of poets. You touch your belly, and you wonder, what would your child inherit? Not just Nero's blood, but this world of fire and silk and lies. Below, the Emperor's eyes flick upward. He sees you. He smiles mid-song. The crowd turns to look. You smile back, carefully, a queen in everything but name. Later, you vomit again. Domitia finds you kneeling on the cool mosaic floor, hair tangled, face pale. She doesn't ask. She just says, "You're going to need protection." "From what?" "From everyone." You laugh, bitter. "That's not new." "No," she says. "But now you're more than just a favourite." She helps you up. "You're a symbol. That means you're valuable." She looks at you hard. "Until you're not." The next morning a rumour spreads through the palace like spilled wine. Poppaea is dead. No warning, no illness, no procession. Just a single shocking decree. The Empress has passed. There's no official story. Some say she fell down the stairs. Others whisper miscarriage. One woman claims she was poisoned by Nero himself. You know the truth, or enough of it. He killed her, just like he killed his mother and his brother and his first wife. Now he's cleared the way for something new. You. You don't cry for her, you don't dare, but your hands shake as you drink your morning tea. You feel the ghost of her still in the room, watching. That night, Nero comes to your chambers. He doesn't speak at first. just sits on the edge of your bed, staring at his hands like he doesn't recognize them. "She wasn't supposed to die," he says quietly. You stay silent. He reaches out and touches your stomach. But now, there's you. There's him. He looks up. "I'm going to marry you." You flinch. "No." He blinks, stunned. "What did you say?" You breathe slowly. "I said no." He rises slowly, disbelief curdling into something colder. "You think you have a choice?" You meet his eyes. "Yes." For a long moment he doesn't move, then he laughs, the kind of laugh that sounds like a mirror cracking. "I could destroy you," he says. "Then why haven't you?" you whisper. His face tightens, then softens. Then strangely he leans forward and kisses your forehead. "We'll speak again tomorrow," he says, and he leaves. You wait until the hallway is silent. Then you unwrap the dagger again. You clean it carefully, because tomorrow may not come. And if it does, it belongs to you. You can feel it now, the isolation that comes with proximity to power. It's a kind of gravity, pulling everything toward you until even your breath feels borrowed. The corridors are quieter when you walk through them. Servants turn their eyes to the ground. The other concubines have disappeared entirely, either dismissed or relocated. Domitia hasn't visited in days. It's as if Nero has already built the invisible walls around you. You are both captive and crown. He calls you Augusta. He calls you Divina. He calls you Mother of the New Rome. But when he says your name, your real one, the one you haven't heard since the Subura, it sounds strange in his mouth, like something fragile he's trying to own. 3 mornings after Poppaea's death, he holds a ceremony. Not public, not yet. Just enough attendants to whisper the news to the world. Nero has a new empress. He dresses you in gold-threaded silk, places a wreath of laurel and myrtle on your head, and declares before the gods and his trembling court that Rome will never lack for love again. The applause is soft, forced. You stand there, painted and perfumed, feeling the weight of the child inside you shift as if he's listening. You can't tell if he's kicking or warning you to run. That night, you're installed in Poppaea's old apartments. They smell of rose oil and envy. Her clothes hang untouched in the wardrobe, her hairpins still on the vanity. You find a perfume bottle tipped on its side, the scent faintly sour now. When you pick it up, the stopper bears a smear of blood. Hers or his, you'll never know. Nero visits after midnight. He's drunk again, but quieter this time. He circles the room like a restless animal, trailing his fingers over her furniture as if testing the ghost that lingers. "She was difficult," he murmurs. "Always wanted more. I gave her everything. Even her death was a gift." You say nothing. The wrong word could end your life, or someone else's. He turns, smiling faintly. "But you're different. You understand the performance." He touches your stomach again. You stiffen. "Our son will be perfect," he says. "Not human, divine." You nod, because that's the only response that keeps you breathing. After he leaves, you wash his touch off in scalding water until your skin burns. Then you vomit again. The water turns pink. When you finally sleep, you dream of your father's stall in the Subura, the smell of citrus peels and sweat, the sound of him laughing. You dream of being small enough to hide under the counter. You wake up crying without remembering why. By dawn, the rebellion has reached the palace walls. At first, it's only whispers. Legions in Gaul refusing to take orders, generals proclaiming themselves saviours of Rome, but the whispers grow teeth. Messengers arrive daily, pale and panting, their scrolls sealed in haste. One night, you overhear 2 praetorians arguing near the gate. "He's lost the people," one says. "He's lost the gods," the other replies. Inside, Nero behaves as if nothing's changed. He hosts banquets, sings, dictates poems to terrified scribes. But you can feel the tension in him, the same way you can feel a storm behind heat-heavy air. He paces more, drinks faster. His laughter comes too loud and ends too abruptly. Domitia finally returns, slipping into your room with a face gone thin and pale. "It's unravelling," she whispers. "The Senate's turning. The guards will follow. He's finished." You want to believe her. You want to feel relief, but you know Nero too well. He doesn't fall quietly. "What will happen to me?" you ask. Domitia hesitates. "If they take the palace, you'll be a trophy." If he flees, you'll be a liability. She sets something on your table, a vial, small, glass, stoppered with wax. Poison, you ask. Mercy, she says, if it comes to that. Then she leaves again, and you're alone with the child and the vial and the whisper of smoke curling from the oil lamp. The next morning, Nero wakes you himself. He's dressed for travel. Leather sandals, a plain cloak, no jewels. The Emperor looks smaller without his costumes, human almost. We're leaving, he says. They want to kill me. He sounds genuinely surprised, like betrayal is a concept invented just to inconvenience him. Where will we go, you ask? Ostia first, Fee, he says. Then Greece. Greece still loves me. You pack nothing. There's no time. He takes your hand as he leads you through the corridors, past servants who pretend not to exist. The halls are empty, the torches burned low. Outside, dawn glows faintly through the mist. As you near the gates, a voice echoes through the courtyard. They've sealed the city. Nero freezes. For a moment you see it, real fear. Not the theatrical kind, the human kind. He looks at you wild-eyed. Do you believe in me? The question is almost pathetic. You lie. Yes. He kisses you, desperate, and runs ahead toward the stables. You follow because you have no other choice. But halfway across the courtyard, something stops you. A sound, a bird high above the palace walls, a single raven cawing once before it vanishes into the grey. An omen. You remember your mother whispering that ravens appear when fates collide. You look toward the stables. Nero's already astride a horse, shouting orders that no one obeys. The guards have vanished. He's alone now, and you realise so are you. You don't follow him. Instead, you turn back toward the palace. The corridors are empty, the silence so thick it feels alive. You walk to Poppeia's chamber, your chamber now, and close the door. The dagger lies where you left it. The vial glints beside it. You sit on the bed, one hand on your stomach. Outside, Rome groans like a dying god. You whisper, "Hold on." You're not sure if you mean the child, the city, or yourself. Then you stand, smooth your robe, and walk toward the sound of the storm. Because someone has to decide what survives the fire this time. There's a strange quiet in the palace now, not the comfortable hush of dawn or the reverent silence that sometimes blankets a temple, but something heavier, like the hush before a blade falls. Even the birds have stopped. The courtyards are still, the fountains running dry. Nero's departure has pulled the last thread from the palace tapestry, and now everything is unravelling in slow motion. You walk the marble corridors barefoot, not because you want to, but because your sandals feel like lies. Too delicate, too silent, like they belong to someone who still believes she's in a dream. You're past dreams now, past illusions, past pretending that the world hasn't already ended twice this week. The guards are gone, vanished. The Praetorian gates are open, the banners stripped. There's no resistance, no clamour of steel, just the echo of your own heartbeat as you move through what used to be the beating heart of empire. The Senate is meeting in secret. You can feel it like a fever in the walls. Domitia slipped you a message just hours ago, scribbled on the back of a poem Nero once forced a slave to recite until his throat bled. Capri has chosen silence. Ostia is closed. The East is watching. Meet us in the library of Agrippa. Bring only truth. And you understood. They were asking for more than your presence. They were asking for your voice. The voice that stood beside Nero as he lied. The voice that whispered loyalty into the ears of a god who burned his own people and called it poetry. You're not sure if they want you for your insight or your image. Either way, you're going. You reach the library through an underground passage known only to servants and rats. It's damp and musty, the air full of mildew and secrets. You wrap a scarf around your mouth, one hand braced on the wall, the other cradling your stomach. The child shifts again, as if sensing the change. It's a boy. You've felt it for days now, not because of Pythia or dreams, but because he never lets you forget he's there. He kicks whenever you hesitate, squirms when you lie. He's like a compass buried beneath your ribs, always pointing you towards something terrifying and true. The Library of Agrippa is half ruined, partially burned during the first fire, its domes cracked, scrolls relocated. But the senators have gathered here anyway. cloaked and hooded like a cult. You recognize faces from Nero's banquets, men who once laughed too hard at a bad poetry and clapped as people were set alight. Now they look pale, drawn, like they've aged 10 years in 10 days. Domitia stands near the centre, flanked by Cassianus and two others you've only ever seen in passing. One of them an exiled general with a limp, the other a woman dressed as a man, her tunic cut to disguise curves. The room falls silent as you enter. You pull the scarf from your face. You don't bow, you just look them in the eye and wait. Domitia speaks first. He's fled. You nod. He won't get far. He's planning to return through Egypt, someone says, with mercenaries, maybe even Parthians. He's still dangerous, another adds, even disgraced. You cross your arms over your stomach. He was dangerous, though, when you made him emperor. When you let him play God and burn half the city while you drank his wine and praised his verses. They shifted uncomfortably. No one argues. Domitia gestures towards to you. She carries his air. That sparks murmurs, some hostile, some curious. Few eyes go to your belly like it's a ticking bomb. You meet their gazes calmly. I won't be a puppet. Not again. Cassianus steps forward, then choose a side. You already have, but saying it aloud makes it real. I want a future, you say. For him, not for Nero, for Rome, one that isn't ruled by fire and flutes. Someone chuckles bitterly. And you think the people will follow a concubine? You look at the man who said it. His eyes are bloodshot, his robe stained with wine. They followed a monster in a crown. I think they're ready for something less theatrical. Another speaks. And what about the child? I'll raise him to know the truth, you reply. That gods don't bleed. And men who pretend they do tend to fall hard. Domitia smiles. It's small, almost sad. We'll support you, if you speak. I'll speak, you say, but not for you, for the ones who burned while you watched. You leave before they can argue, back through the damp tunnels, back into the sunlight that looks more honest than it has in weeks. That night the fires finally go out, not by decree, just by exhaustion. There's no more fuel left to burn, the air is cleaner, almost fresh, and you step out onto the palace balcony and speak. There's no crowd, just a few remaining soldiers, a handful of servants, and the city beyond, quiet, wounded, waiting. You speak of the fire, of the lies, of the boy you carry who will never know his father's delusions. You speak not like a queen, but like someone who lived in the ash. You don't ask for forgiveness. You don't offer excuses. You speak plainly, honestly, and they listen. The next morning Nero's declared a public enemy. The Senate votes without fanfare. The guards do not protest. Domitia tells you that he is hiding on the outskirts of the city, in a villa once owned by a freedman, alone, afraid. You don't smile, you just ask, will they kill him? They'll try, she says, unless he gets there first. The dagger is still in your room. You don't need it now. Some choices make themselves. You wake to thunder, but it's not a storm, just the sound of thousands of footsteps. Rome has found its voice again. People are back in the streets, shouting, singing, arguing. Alive! The silence that had pressed over the city like a burial shroud has lifted. The air still stinks of ash, yes, but there's breath in it now. The suffocating stillness of Nero's rule has broken, and in its place something raw and loud has begun to take shape. You stand at the balcony wrapped in a simple robe. No jewels, no gold. The boy in your belly kicks as if to remind you he's listening. Or maybe to remind you he's waiting. For what, he doesn't say. Cassianus arrives mid-morning, flushed and winded. He doesn't bow anymore. You've both outgrown the performances. He's still alive, he says, skipping any greeting. In the villa, south of Rome, surrounded but not yet taken. You nod. You'd heard the same from Domitia hours earlier. You'd heard even stranger things, that he was weeping uncontrollably, that he was singing to his reflection, that he was writing letters to long-dead poets asking for absolution, that he kept a dagger by his side but hadn't yet found the courage to use it. You want to go to him, Cassianus says. It isn't a question. I need to, you answer. He doesn't argue. A few hours later, you're on the road in a closed carriage, flanked by two of Cassianus's men dressed as couriers. The streets aren't safe yet. There are too many desperate people with the too many old debts. The empire hasn't collapsed, but it's lurching, reshaping, trying to remember how to stand on its own legs again. The journey south is hot and slow. The sun pounds through the shutters like a curse. Your skin itches, your back aches, your stomach turns. You clutch your belly through most of the ride, whispering to the child within that everything will be fine. It feels like a lie even as you say it. The villa appears just before dusk. It's smaller than you expected, unassuming, almost pastoral. Grapevines strangle the outer walls, the garden is overgrown. The statues out front are chipped and fading. A few guards stand at the edge of the property, half-hearted in their duties. They recognise you at once, but they don't salute. They simply part. Inside, the air is damp, cold, like the house has already died and no one remembered to bury it. You walk through the atrium slowly, past overturned amphorae, empty plates, wine stains on the floor that look darker than wine. There's no sign of servants, only silence. Then you hear it. Music, soft, broken, a lyre strummed with fingers that no longer care about melody. You find him in a side chamber, curtains drawn, naked to the waist, his once golden curls tangled and matted with sweat, his cheeks hollow, his eyes dull. Nero. The god emperor looks like a boy who forgot how to be loved. He looks up when you enter, and for the first time you see something human in his face, not power, not madness, just terror. You came, he says. You nod. He stares at your belly. They say you carry my son. Do I? His eyes fill with tears. Will he hate me? Oh. You don't answer. He nods, as if he expected that. They're going to kill me, he says. Cassianus, the Senate, all of them. You kneel beside him, slowly, your joints aching, your breath thin. You could run, you offer. He chuckles. There's a dry, crumbling sound. There's nowhere left. He picks up the dagger lying beside him, the same design as yours. The imperial issue, identical. His hands shake as he holds it. I tried, he says, to be more, to be remembered. You will be, you whisper, but not the way you wanted. He looks at you, tears spilling now. Was it all madness? You hesitate. Then, no, just too much truth without enough mercy. He nods, slowly, then takes your hand and presses it to his heart. Tell him, he says. Tell our son. I was trying to be a god. You pull your hand away gently. Be human first, you say. He looks down at the dagger, then up at you. Will you stay? You nod. For this part, he turns away, and you do not watch. You sit in silence as the music stops, as the world loses its most dangerous poet. You return to Rome at sunrise. The Senate meets at the Forum, and the news is announced without drama. The Emperor Nero, they say, has died by his own hand. The line of Caesar ends. People flood the streets. Some cheer, some cry, some do nothing. Rome, in her usual fashion, grieves and forgets at the same time. You go home, not to the palace, never again, but to a quiet house on the Aventine Hill, where no one bows, no one whispers, and the walls don't watch you. Domitia visits. Cassianus sends food. The boy grows. And one night, as the wind cools and the first stars rise, you sit beneath an olive tree and tell him a story about a man who thought he was a god, and about the woman who saw through the fire. You leave the past in pieces, scattered across the marble and ash like bones in a field long since abandoned. Rome moves on, as it always does, like a drunk god stumbling forward, eyes glazed, memory fading by the hour. Nero's name still lingers in corners, the corners of whispered jokes, of dark poetry, of curses mumbled by the poor. But already they've stopped fearing him. Now he's a story, a warning, a ghost with a laurel crown. You live quietly on the Aventine Hill. The house is small by imperial standards, modest, stone walls painted with flowers, not gods, a garden thick with rosemary, olive, and sun-warmed thyme. There's a fig tree that bends toward your bedroom window as if it, too, is watching over you. For the first time in years, you sleep without guards outside the door, without silk-wrapped lies coiling in the dark, without someone watching you like a prize they haven't yet paid for. You stop flinching when the wind shifts. The boy grows fast, faster than you expected. His kicks are fierce, sometimes startling enough to wake you from sleep. You talk to him more now, about anything, everything, about Rome and silence and things you've done to survive. You tell him the truth, or at least your version of it. He deserves that. even if the world won't give it to him. Sometimes you catch yourself smiling. That used to be a warning sign, back when joy always preceded punishment. But now it's just soft, real. You let yourself enjoy simple things. Warm bread, clean sheets, the sun on your feet. The world hasn't healed, but you're not bleeding anymore either. That counts for something. Cassianus visits when he can. Never in uniform, never through the front gate. He brings updates from the Senate. Who's rising? Who's falling? Who might be reaching for the crown next year's... There's always someone. Rome is addicted to power like Nero was addicted to applause. You don't tell Cassianus about the dreams. They come often now, thick with smoke and gold and music. In one, Nero stands at the edge of a cliff, arms open wide, singing to the sea as flames rise behind him. In another, you see the baby born into fire, eyes golden, mouth open in a scream that sounds like a hymn. You wake from that one with your hand over your stomach and tears on your cheeks. Pythia visits only once. She comes in silence, unannounced, wearing grey robes that billow like mist. She places her hands on your belly again, mutters something in a language you don't recognise, then steps back. "You're still dreaming of him," she says. Not a question. You nod. "It will pass." Or it won't, she says. But it won't define the child. Then she leaves. You never see her again. And you're fine with that. One morning, Domitia arrives with food, more than you need. Bread wrapped in linen, goat cheese, a jar of olives stuffed with herbs. She walks the garden with you, arm hooked in yours. She's older now, not in years, but in wear. She carries the empire in her bones like a sword she can't put down. "You could come back," she says softly, "to the court. When the new emperor is chosen, they'll need familiar faces, symbols of continuity." You shake your head. "I've performed enough for one lifetime." She squeezes your hand. "They'll come looking anyway. You know that, right? Let them." Domitia leaves at dusk. You watch her disappear down the hill, her silhouette framed by the bleeding light. You don't cry. You've run out of that kind of grief. The baby arrives in the 7th month, early but not dangerously so. He enters the world screaming, angry at the cold. The midwife calls it a good omen. You hold him to your chest, overwhelmed by the sheer weight of him, small, perfect, and loud. His lungs are strong. His eyes are open. He doesn't look like Nero, not yet anyway. But you know better than to expect the past to stay buried. You name him Lucius, after your father. A quiet name, a name that doesn't chase history or challenge the gods, a name that means light. The city is calm in the weeks that follow. The Senate finally selects a new emperor, one of the generals from the provinces. He promises reform, justice, restoration. You've heard it before, you will hear it again. But for now, the people seem willing to believe it. They want to believe, and so you stay quiet. Let them. You walk the garden each morning with Lucius strapped to your chest, your hand resting over his back. The fig tree casts long shadows and the bees are busy with their quiet lives. You hum to him sometimes, nothing from Nero's repertoire, just the lullabies your mother sang back in the Subura, back when the world was smaller and you believed in stories that ended well. A letter arrives from the palace one day, sealed in red wax. You don't open it. You feed Lucius, rock him until he sleeps, then burn the letter over the garden flame. You've had enough of palaces, enough of golden lies, but still, sometimes you wonder, what kind of man will Lucius become? Will he ask about his father? Will he crave a legacy that burned the world before he ever took his first breath? Or will he become something else entirely? A man who knows how to hold both love and power without shattering either? You don't know. But tonight, the air is cool, the stars are bright, the Empire has forgotten you, for now. You hold your son close and whisper in his ear, "You're not your father, you're mine." He sighs in his sleep, and for the first time in years, you do too. Time moves differently outside the palace, slower but heavier. In the months following Lucius's birth, you settle into the rhythm of ordinary life, if you can call anything, in post-Nero Rome ordinary. The city is still rebuilding itself, coughing up ash and old ghosts, trying to remember what it was before madness wrapped itself in a purple cloak and called it divinity. But out here on the Aventine Hill there's peace, or at least something that pretends well enough to pass. You water the fig tree each morning, measure Lucius's breath as he sleeps, and speak only when you choose. is the first time your voice has truly belonged to you. The new emperor, Servius Sulpicius Galba, a military man with a soldier's bluntness and none of Nero's theatrical charm, sends word, more than once. The first letter was stiff and formal. The Republic recognises the service of the Lady Augusta and wishes to ensure her continued welfare. The second was shorter. You are requested at court. The third didn't bother with words, just a name scribbled across papyrus like a warning. Lucius, you do not respond. Cassianus visits soon after. He's changed. He's thinner, greyer at the temples, the scar on his hand more pronounced. Power has worn on him like key weather. He walks the garden with you in silence, watching Lucius crawl through the dirt like the world is brand new beneath his hands. They want him, Cassianus says softly. You don't look at him. Of course they do. He's the last thread to Nero, even if people pretend they've cut it. They're not pretending, you say. They're rewriting. He nods. Yes, but even erased men leave shadows. He's proof Nero was human, that he bled, that he left something behind. You should glance at your son. He's examining a beetle now, utterly fascinated. The sun turns his curls gold. You hate that. You love that. You hate that you love that. Galba's nervous, Cassianus adds. Too many generals with ambition. Too many whispers of divine bloodlines. You sigh. If they try to take him, they won't. Not if you do something first, you turn. Like what? He meets your gaze. Control the story. Barbulo. You leave the house for the first time in months that evening, veiled, cloaked, escorted by a pair of discreet guards from Cassianus's household. Lucius stays behind, watched over by a woman you trust. You hate the separation. It feels like stepping into fire with wet skin. You don't go to the palace. You go to the forum. A crowd is already there, because rumour is faster than horses, and the idea of Nero's mistress appearing in public again spreads like a storm. They expect spectacle, shame, maybe a plea. You give them none of that. You step onto the rostrum, lift your veil and speak. I have no crown, you begin. No husband, no throne. I am not asking for power. The crowd quiets. That's always the first step, taking away what they expect. I am a mother, you continue. My son carries the name Lucius. Not Nero, not Caesar. He will not perform, he will not pretend to be a god, he will grow as you grow. With your sons, with your daughters, with Rome. Someone shouts, he's still Nero's blood. You pause, let the fear bloom. Then let him be proof that blood does not decide everything. You leave the rostrum in silence. No applause, no tomatoes, just stunned quiet. That's enough. By the time you return home, 3 new letters await. One from Galba's personal scribe, one from a priest of Apollo, and one with no name at all, just a wax seal broken carefully at the edge. You burn the first 2. You read the third. Inside is a simple note. You're not done. You turn the parchment over. A single hair is pressed between the folds, curled and pale. Papias, or someone pretending it's hers. It's a message either way. The next weeks feel strange. You're visible again, carefully, strategically. You walk in the markets, greet the bakers by name, speak to the women who lost sons in the fire. You give money to rebuild a fountain. You give linen to the midwives. You do the things that matter not because they matter to the Senate, but because they matter to the streets. You rewrite yourself in the space Nero used to devour. And Rome notices. They start calling you the dove, not for your peace, but for your flight. You fled the palace, you fled the crown, and you chose not to rule. And somehow that makes you more powerful than if you had stayed. Domitia returns, her visits less frequent, but warmer. She holds Lucius for long minutes at a time, even when he fusses. He looks like you, she says one day. You smirk. He'd better. She kisses your cheek before she leaves. It feels like closure. And then one morning, you find something waiting on your garden bench. A mask, carved from wood, painted white with an open mouth and wild eyes. Nero's old stage mask, a mockery, a threat, a memory. You sit beside it and wait, all day, until the sun slips away and the shadows stretch long across the stones. Then Cassianus appears again. You saw it? You nod. Someone wants me to remember. They want to see if you'll run. You don't. You wrap the mask in linen and bury it under the fig tree. Then you take Lucius in your arms. and for the first time since Nero's death you sing, not for an audience, not for survival, just for him. The lullaby is soft, wordless, from before palaces, from before fire. He sleeps in your arms before the final note fades. You hold him there as the wind blows, soft and cold, and think, Rome doesn't get to decide who he becomes, and neither does Nero. It's a strange thing, learning to live in the aftermath of a man like Nero. His presence lingers in Rome like the scent of burned perfume, sweet, cloying and sour underneath. You can't walk through the Forum without hearing some new joke about him. A street performer does the impressions of his final speech. What an artist dies in Miat, and the crowd laughs like it didn't flinch at the sound of his footsteps that a year ago. He's become parody, a ghost made safe by distance. But you remember the heat of him, the music, the smell of blood masked by roses. And worse, you remember what you became to survive him. You don't talk about it. Not in the way people want you to. They want scandal, secrets, a scrap of gossip to carry back to their dinner tables. You give them silence or careful truths wrapped in modesty. You tell them Nero played the lyre too long. You don't tell them he asked if you would mourn him. You don't tell them you sometimes still hear his voice when you wake, soft and cruel. You focus on Lucius. He walks now, unsteady but determined. He points at statues and demands names, asks what fire is, why figs are sweet, why bees sting. You answer every question, every one, because the world tried to teach you silence, and you refuse to pass that down. Cassianus visits more often, less as a messenger, more as a friend. You share wine in the garden at dusk while Lucius pulls weeds and pretends they're dragons. He's curious, Cassianus says, watching him. He's everything Nero wasn't, you reply. That earns a look, not judgment, just a kind of wary sympathy. He might still become him one day, you shake your head. Not if I can help it. You don't want to talk about legacy. You want to talk about the small things, the herbs growing in the sun, the way Lucius hums when he concentrates, the sound of bees in the walls that means honey's coming soon, but legacy never leaves you alone. One morning a letter arrives, this one from Galba himself. It isn't a request, it's a demand. The boy is a symbol. Rome cannot afford to forget its mistakes. Bring him before the Senate. Let the people see he is flesh, not prophecy. You reread the message 10 times, then you burn it. Cassianus hears before you even tell him. That's how fast whispers move here. If you refuse, they'll force the issue, he warns. If I comply, I feed the myth, you snap. Cassianus sighs. They fear what they don't see. That boy is a shadow to them. A threat until proven otherwise. And what happens when they look at him and see something they do recognize? He doesn't answer. You walk the garden that night until your feet ache. Lucius asleep on your shoulder. You consider running. Egypt, maybe. Farther even. Disappear entirely. But running is what Nero did in the end, and you will not teach your son to run from a world he deserves to shape, so you say yes, but on your terms. The procession is small but watched by many. You dress plainly in a linen gown without colour. No laurel, no veil. Lucius wears the same, no gold, no sandals, just a child with messy curls and a stubborn mouth. You carry him through the Forum in your arms, not on a litter, not behind a guard. You walk one foot in front of the other, eyes forward. People line the streets, some cheer, some spit. One woman throws olive branches at your feet. You don't flinch. At the Curia, you enter the Senate chamber and pause just inside the marble threshold. Lucius clutches your shoulder, blinking at the room full of old men with sharp tongues and sharper eyes. Galba sits at the centre, stern and grey, his hands folded like he's posing for a statue. He speaks. This is the child. You nod. His name is Lucius. Born of Nero? Born of Rome, you say calmly. Like any of us, the senators murmur. Galba raises a hand. And his father's legacy? You meet his eyes. Burned, like the rest of the city. Lucius shifts in your arms. You set him down gently and he walks toward the centre of the chamber, where the floor is inlaid with a map of the empire. He kneels and traces the edge of the Tiber with one chubby finger. A few of the senators chuckle. One snorts. Galba watches. What do you ask of us? You lift your chin. Leave him alone. The room quiets. He is not a god, not a prince, not a piece of propaganda. He's a child, a Roman. If he earns power, Let it be his ding. If he fails, let it be his own fault. But don't decide his fate based on blood you spilled and want to forget. There is a silence after that. Galba finally says, "So be it." You take Lucius' hand and leave without bowing. Back on the Aventine, the sun feels warmer than it should. You sit with Lucius on the garden wall watching birds flit through the olive trees. He asks if fire ever forgets where it started. You don't know how to answer. Instead, you say, "Do you want to hear a story?" He nods. You begin with once, not once upon a time, just once. There was a boy who wanted to be a god, and there was a girl who saw through him, and now there is you. Summer arrives in waves, hot, golden and sticky, settling on Rome like a second skin. On the Aventine, the olive trees go pale with dust and the bees are so drunk on nectar they stagger from bloom to bloom. You rise early to water the garden before the sun scorches everything flat. Lucius insists on helping, even if that mostly means chasing lizards and asking an exhausting amount of questions about how roots drink. You tell him what you can. When you don't know the answer, you say, "Let's find out together." He likes that more than pretending you know everything. You find yourself wondering what Nero would have made of this life. A child in the dirt, a garden instead of a throne. Would he have mocked it, tried to turn it into a play? Or would it have scared him, to be forgotten, to live without an audience? You never really knew the man beneath the crown. You're not even sure he existed. The show was the man was the show. But Lucius is real. More real than anyone you've ever known. He laughs when he's happy, and cries when he falls, and hugs you too hard around the neck when you've been silent too long. He doesn't know what power is, only what warmth feels like. And gods, you would burn every last temple in Rome to keep him safe from the machinery of legacy. One morning you find a messenger waiting by the garden wall, trying not to sweat in the rising heat. He bows too deeply. You don't like that. "What is it?" you ask, holding Lucius's hand as he peeks from behind your leg. The man offers a scroll. The seal is unfamiliar, new, not Galba, not Senate. Something else. A name scrawled across the ribbon. Vibius Rufinus. You unroll it carefully. The Principate weakens. Civil war is not a possibility. It is a certainty. Those who hold symbols of stability will shape the next chapter. The child is such a symbol. There are those willing to offer you protection in exchange for your allegiance. We ask for nothing now. But remember this, neutrality is never truly neutral. You read it twice, then you fold it, hand it back to the messenger and say, "Tell your master I'll respond when I feel like it." He nods, startled, and disappears. Cassianus arrives later that day, already aware of the message. Of course he is. Nothing moves in Rome without 5 people hearing about it before it lands. You've become important again, he is as you pour wine. "I never stopped being important," you reply. "They just stopped remembering." Cassianus leans back on the bench, watching Lucius play with a wooden lion carved from olive wood. If this turns into war, and it will, someone will come for him. Maybe not today, maybe not next year, but eventually someone will decide he's useful. You sip your wine, letting it sit on your tongue before swallowing. "Then we'll be ready." He arches a brow. "We?" You smile. "You're still here, aren't you?" Cassianus smirks, but his eyes soften. "I meant what I said once. You don't have to be part of this." You glance at Lucius. "But I already am." The city starts to fracture again. Galba, hailed months ago as Rome's sober saviour, proves too inflexible, too cruel in quiet ways. He enforces order like a blade, not by mending, but by severing. His reforms hurt the wrong people. Senators begin to conspire. Generals move their pieces across the map like gamblers circling a final bet. And through it all, your name begins to surface again. Whispers in bathhouses, speculation in temples. Nero's woman, they say, the mother of the last Caesar, even though you never married him, even though Lucius has no official claim. None of it matters to people who want myth more than truth. One night, Domitia returns. She's paler now, more careful. She wears darker colours, moves like someone who expects every doorway to lead to poison. They're positioning Vibius Rufinus for power, she tells you. If Galba falls, he'll rise, and he wants Lucius to be his star. You stare at her. A child mascot. A living emblem of continuity. The child who survived the fire. That's what they're calling him now. Disgusting, you say flatly. She sighs. It works. You pour tea. Won't parade him through politics. Domitia sits, folding her hands. If you refuse, they'll say you're hiding something. If you accept, they'll say you're scheming. There's no winning this. You nod slowly. There's surviving, though. And that's always been enough. That night, Lucius wakes crying. You rush to him, heart in your throat, already tasting fear. But he's not sick, not wounded, just shaking from a dream. I saw the man in the gold robe, he whispers. You freeze. What did he do? You ask, brushing his hair back. He was on fire, and he was laughing. Your hand stills Tolo. You rock him until the tremors fade. You don't ask more. You don't want to know what lingers in his blood, what memories might be sewn into his bones. You just hold him tighter, whispering old lullabies from the Subura, the ones that made no promises but still sounded like love. Later, as he sleeps, you sit beside his bed and whisper into the dark. He's gone, you say. He can't touch you. You don't entirely believe it. You make a choice the next morning, not to run, not to fight, but to write. You begin a record, part diary, part letter, part confession. You write the truth as you lived it, not as Rome wants to remember it. You write about the smoke, the silk, the screams, about the rosewater baths that masked rot, about Nero's lies, his music, the gentle way he sometimes touched your face before he ordered someone's death. You write about what it means to be believed, what it cost. And in between you write about Lucius, what he says, what he dreams, the way he laughs at clouds and asks why cicadas cry. You hide the pages behind a loose tile in your room, not for posterity, not for power, but so that if someone ever tries to turn Lucius into a myth, they'll at least know where the truth was buried. And still, the city moves on. The baker still calls you Dove. The garden still grows. Lucius still asks impossible questions. And every time he falls asleep on your shoulder, you think, let them come. You are not the concubine anymore. You are the fire that learned how to cool, and you will not be burned again. You feel it in the morning air, the shift, subtle at first, like the scent of rain just before it falls. Something is changing in Rome again. The streets are louder, the markets tenser, the temples more crowded than usual. People are praying to every god who will listen, and a few who never did. War is no longer whispered. It's preparing its boots. Galba is falling. His reforms made enemies in all the wrong places, among the guards, the senate, and worst of all, the generals. You hear his name now only in bitterness or jest. No one shouts it in the streets. No one carries his image. His silence on Nero's excesses is being remembered now, and suddenly everyone's decided they were against him all along. That's how Rome works. When power teeters, loyalty gets very creative. Cassianus brings news as he always does, but this time it's worse than usual. He waits until Lucius is asleep and the garden is empty of birdsong before he speaks. They're backing Vibius Rufinus. He's won the army in Illyria and half the Senate. You don't look up from the stitching in your lap. I know. He's coming for you next. You stop mid-thread. The child? Cassianus nods slowly. They want to put Lucius beside him. A new Augustus to his new Caesar. It'll be symbolic. Glorious. Clean. And if I refuse, then the boy becomes a threat. You let the needle fall into your lap. So either Lucius is a golden shield or a knife they're afraid of. That's the truth of it. You stare out at the fig tree. The fruit is ripening too early this year. Everything is. The seasons are out of rhythm. Maybe the gods are tired of pretending too. Does Rufinus know what Nero was? You ask softly. He knows the stories. And what of the truth? Cassianus watches you for a long time. He doesn't care. You feel the old anger stirring, the one you buried with the silk robes and the painted smiles. Not rage, something colder, focused. They won't get him, you say. No, Cassianus agrees, but they'll try. You begin preparing quietly. No soldiers, no banners, just layers of contingency. The woman who watches Lucius by day now sleeps closer to his room. A former scribe from the Imperial Library arrives, with nothing but a satchel of scrolls and a dagger hidden in the hem of his tunic. You increase your food stores. You stop taking visitors who don't bring fresh eggs or fig jam. You smile more and speak less. Lucius senses the tension, but he doesn't ask. He just holds your hand more often and checks the door each night before bed, like he's mimicking something he doesn't yet understand. You wait. And then the summons comes. A formal letter, sealed in deep blue wax, stamped with a phoenix. The emblem Rufinus has chosen for himself. Rebirth through Baton. How poetic. The Consul Vibius. Rufinus requests the presence of the Lady Augusta and her son Lucius for an audience of honour. Rome demands unity, and your name carries weight in the hearts of its people. Do not refuse what is already yours. It's not even threatening. That's the most insulting part. They think you'll be flattered. You don't respond. The second message arrives within days, hand-delivered by a soldier in full dress. He bows before he speaks. If you do not present the boy by the Ides, a summons will become an order. You let the silence answer for you. That night you write 2 letters. One is to Cassianus, short, brutal, the lion stirs, prepare the nets. The second is for Lucius, though he's too young to read it. You hide it in the same loose tile as the rest of your writings, my son. If this finds you and I am gone, know that I did everything I could to keep you free. I did not make you a god, I did not make you a sword, I made you a boy, and I hoped you'd become something better than what came before. You seal it and cry only after the ink dries. On the eve of the Ides, the trap arrives. 3 soldiers dressed as visitors, one disguised as a messenger. The last slips through the side wall under moonlight. But you're ready. The woman who watches Lucius guts the first one before he gets past the atrium. The scribe poisons the wine left for the second. The third you meet yourself, dagger in hand. He hesitates when he sees you. You were supposed to come willingly, he mutters. You don't blink. I did once. Look how that ended. He lunges. You don't wait. The dagger meets his ribs before his blade clears its sheath. He dies at your feet, eyes wide with something that looks suspiciously like regret. Cassianus arrives shortly after dawn, followed by 3 loyal soldiers and 1 bleeding senator who still believes in the Republic. They burn the bodies, quietly, thoroughly. The ashes scattered with the garden soil beneath the fig tree. You hold Lucius tightly that night. He sleeps soundly, as if violence never touched your doorstep. As if he trusts that the world, at least for now, is held at bay by the hands that rock his cradle. You know it can't last, but you've bought time, and time, in Rome, is a more precious currency than gold or gods. Domitia writes to you the next day. She's fled the city. Too many names shifting, too many alliances unravelling. She tells you to come with her, to raise Lucius in peace somewhere along the coast, where no one knows what he carries in his blood. You consider it. Truly you do. You think of warm sea air and laughter that doesn't echo with history. You think of Lucius running in the sand, not chased by shadows. You think of waking each day without checking the locks on your doors. But you stay, because running now would only delay what must happen. Lucius must live in Rome, grow in Rome, not be hidden away like shame or a secret. If he is to break the legacy of his father, he must face the world that worshipped and feared that father. He must be seen, not as an emperor, not as a weapon, but as a boy who survived. And you'll stay by his side as long as the gods or your own will allow it, because the story isn't over yet, and for once you're the one writing it. The air is dry when the first stone is thrown, not at your house, not at you, but at a statue in the Forum, one of Nero's last still standing. It's not even a very good likeness, more of a smear of features perched above a poorly carved toga. The nose falls off first, then the jaw. By the time the sun sets, the head is a pile of broken marble at its base, and someone scrawled "No gods, no kings" in wine across the pedestal. It's not rebellion, not yet, but it's something. You watch from a distance Lucius asleep in your arms, his curls damp with sweat. The city has reached that strange, trembling place between fear and fury. Galba is out, murdered. A young general named Otho has declared himself emperor. People cheer, mostly because they're tired of change and want to believe this one might stick. Vibius Rufinus hasn't responded yet, but you know he will. Rome never permits a vacuum for long. You've seen it before, the lurching forward, the shaking off of old power like a snake shedding skin. But what the snake doesn't know, what no one tells you, is that it bleeds when it does. You stay inside for days, not from fear, but because you want Lucius to remember stillness. Gardens, the scent of olive oil on warm bread. You teach him to read simple Latin letters using bits of bark and ink on linen scraps. He writes his name in crooked strokes, proudly showing each line to the servants like it's a proclamation. He has no idea what his name means outside your walls, that's the point. But the world keeps knocking. Cassianus returns, face grim, tunic travel-stained. He's limping slightly, nothing serious, he says, just a skirmish with Rufinus's men near the bridge at Pont Sublicius. It's war now, he tells you, leaning against the garden wall. Not the kind fought on parchment. Real blades, real blow, real blood. And Lucius, you ask? Cassianus exhales. They're still naming him, chanting his name in the streets. Even Otho's people. Everyone wants a thread to the past, but only the parts that benefit them. They want the image, not the boy. You nod. Then we vanish. He looks at you. You're serious. I'm done waiting for someone else to decide if my son is a symbol. I want him to grow before they turn him into a sword. Cassianus runs a hand over his face. I can get you out, but it won't be forever. Sooner or later, Rome will find you. Then we'll deal with that later, you say. But for now, get us as far from the Tiber as your horses can take us. The next morning, before dawn, you dress Lucius in a plain tunic. You pack nothing precious, only food, a few scrolls, one dagger, the original, and the letter you wrote him months ago, now sealed with wax and wrapped in linen. You place it in the bottom of a leather satchel beneath strips of dried meat and bundles of herbs. He won't find it until he's older, maybe not until you're gone, and that's how it should be. Cassianus meets you by the stable just as the light begins to spill over the rooftops. The cart is simple, 2 oxen, no markings, no escort. No one would glance at it twice. Lucius, half asleep, clings to your side. You lift him into your lap as the wheels begin to turn. You do not look back. Not when the city gates shrink behind you. Not when the morning bells ring from the capital. Not even when the first bird calls from the fig tree behind your house. You don't need to see Rome. You've carried it long enough. You travel south, past the fields of Aricia, past the lakes of Nemi, past the shadow of old temples carved into the rock like forgotten teeth. You stay in villas borrowed from dead senators, in stables cleared by allies, in forests watched by Cassianus's scouts. You tell Lucius it's a game, one where silence is magic and running keeps the stars from falling. He believes you. In private, you let your guard down. You eat too much bread and fall asleep with your arms around your son like the world might disappear if you let go. And slowly he grows. He stops calling you Mama and starts saying your name when he wants your attention. He finds the hidden dagger one afternoon and demands to be taught. You refuse, then relent, only a little. You teach him to climb trees, to fish, to read the wind. You speak of Nero only once when he asks where his father is buried. Nowhere, you say, because he wanted to live forever, and the world didn't let him. Lucius doesn't ask again. Years pass like falling leaves. Rome does what Rome always does, reshapes itself. Otho dies. Vitellius rises, then falls. The legions eat each other. The Senate screams itself hoarse. Somewhere in the chaos, Vibius Rufinus vanishes. Some say he drowned himself. Others whisper he tried to crown himself emperor using Lucius's name, and was assassinated before he could make it to the rostrum. You never bother to find out the truth. Some names don't deserve graves. Cassianus stays close even after his leg wounds begin to slow him down. He teaches Lucius more than you ever could. Tactics, diplomacy, the delicate art of knowing when to speak and when to let silence do the heavy lifting. You never remarry, never want to. You loved once, maybe. In a strange, twisted way. But nothing after Nero ever touched your ribs the same way. Love feels too much like obligation now, and your love is already taken. By Lucius, the boy, the survivor, the unclaimed prince. One day he'll choose whether to carry the truth of who he is, whether to stand in the forum and speak his father's name aloud, or let it stay in the soil where it belongs. You won't make that choice for him, but you will give him the tools, the strength, the story, the real one. You sit by a fire one night, Lucius asleep beside you, Cassiana snoring nearby, and you begin writing again. The story is longer now, richer. It doesn't end in woe. It begins with a girl who refused to be a footnote, and a child who was never a symbol, only a boy, brave enough to live after the world had burned.